Chapter 1246. Qian Yu was still in seclusion to refine the dragon phoenix sacred heart, so Ji Tianqing did not disturb her. He left the sword world with the black dragon and returned to the sky above the East Sea. When the black dragon appeared in the sky, its huge body brought about a huge gust of wind, casting a huge shadow on the surface of the sea. It let out a joyful dragon roar and circled in the sky before flying in front of Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. Yunyao also revealed an expression of disbelief when she saw such a huge change in the black dragon. She was happy and gratified for it. After chatting for a while, the black dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yunyao to the returning ruins of the East Sea. Now that the black dragon had reached the first tier of the soul refinement realm, its flying speed was unbelievably fast. It could travel 120,000 miles in a day. Although this was not as fast as Ji Tianqing's sword kinesis flight, it was still very powerful. However, its magic power was incomparably abundant, and its strength lasted for a long time. Even flying continuously for a month wouldn't be a problem. 5 days later, the black dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yunyao and flew in the Northeast Sea. Below them was a boundless blue sea. There were a few scattered islands every few tens of thousands of miles. Yunyao sat upright on the back of the black dragon, meditating the entire time. Ji Tianqing stood on the dragon's back and looked at the sea in front of him. His expression became more and more serious. His brows were tightly knitted as if he was thinking about something. Suddenly, the black dragon turned to look at him and said in a low voice, "Old Ji, I feel that something is wrong with this sea." Ji Tianqing's thoughts were interrupted. He looked at it with a surprised expression and asked, "You also see the problem?" "Yes." The black dragon gradually slowed down and said in a low voice, "I feel that the color of the sea water in this sea seems to be darker. It's also emitting poison. I also noticed that there are many corpses of fish, prawns, and aquatic demons floating on the sea." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a serious expression, "That's right. The sea water in this sea is indeed very poisonous. Those fish, prawns, and aquatic demons were all poisoned to death. If I'm not wrong, something must have happened to this part of the sea. There must be more corpses buried at the bottom of the sea." Black Dragon was silent for a moment, and then worriedly asked, "Old Ji, could it be that the Aqua clan is in trouble? Should we go take a look? After all, you and Tai are sworn brothers, and I am also a member of the Black Dragon race." Ji Tianqing only thought about it for a moment before he nodded in agreement. "All right, let's go to the bottom of the sea and see what's going on. I have a bad premonition. I hope it won't come true." Yunyao had been awakened by their conversation. She opened her eyes and looked at Ji Tianqing, asking, "Tianqing, do you have a bad feeling? Do you mean that the changes in this sea area have something to do with the blood god and the demons?" Ji Tianqing slightly nodded, then continued in a deep voice, "By now, the demon clan has sent out a great number of blood gods, crazily slaughtering the people of the three kinds, including the water kind. If a blood god sneaks into the East Sea and slaughters the people in the territory of the water kind, it will be troublesome." Yunyao understood his concern and quickly nodded. "In that case, let's not rush to the ruins of the East Sea. Let's go to the bottom of the sea and see what's going on first." As soon as she finished speaking, Black Dragon descended from the sky and dived into the vast East Sea with a swoosh. It was a dragon of the sea, so it could travel through the vast sea effortlessly. Instead, it was like a fish in water. Moreover, Black Dragon, Ji Tianqing, and Yunyao were all in the soul-refining realm. They were not afraid of the poison in the sea at all. In just a few short breaths, Black Dragon had dived to a depth of 5 kilometers. The light in the deep sea was dim, the water was cold, and the pressure was extremely high. It was dead silent in all directions. No sound could be heard, and not a single fish could be seen. Under Ji Tianqing's command, Black Dragon continued to dive into the sea. When it reached a depth of 15 kilometers, it finally reached the bottom of the sea that was full of reefs and corals. The cold bottom of the sea contained rich mineral resources. There were many rocks and reefs that contained metal components. There were also glowing aquatic plants that would emit a faint light. However, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao looked around and found that the aquatic plants and corals at the bottom of the sea had all withered and died. There were also large piles of fish corpses in the reefs and mud. Most of them were rotten and only bones were left. The seawater contained strong poison. There was also black blood and rotten flesh that could be seen with the naked eye swimming slowly with the current. Black Dragon quickly traveled through the dark bottom of the sea and flew towards the northeast. During this process, everyone could only see that the bottom of the sea was covered in white bones. They were all the corpses of various fish and aquatic creatures. From giant whales that were thousands of meters long to palm-sized fish, prawns, and shells, none of them were spared. Even the aquatic demons and aquatic creatures that had a certain level of strength could not escape the corrosion of the poison. After they died, they turned into rotten bones and lay on the dark and cold bottom of the sea. 2 hours later, Black Dragon had traveled more than 10,000 kilometers under the sea. An underwater city appeared in front of everyone. This was an ancient city with a circumference of tens of miles. It was situated on a flat reef, built from countless huge pitch-black reefs. The walls of the ancient city and the buildings in the city were covered in aquatic plants and aquatic plants. They looked very strange and rare. If it was a normal day, the hundreds of thousands of aquatic creatures living in the city would be herding billions of fish and prawns and raising countless powerful aquatic creatures. The dense schools of fish and all kinds of glowing fish and aquatic creatures would also bring a faint light to the ancient city. Colorful corals would also grow in the ancient city, bringing beautiful colors to the dark ancient city. Such an underwater ancient city was beautiful and magnificent. It was exhilarating and exciting. However, when Ji Tianqing and Yunyao arrived at the top of the ancient city, they could not see such a beautiful scene. What they saw was a cold and dark ancient city. There was not a trace of light or colorful colors. There were only hundreds of millions of dead fish and prawns, and hundreds of thousands of dead aquatic creatures piled up in the city, exuding a chilling aura of death. Seeing such a tragic scene, Yunyao and Black Dragon both had heavy hearts. Ji Tianqing flew into the ancient city and opened his pure heart Dharma eye. He released his divine soul power and carefully checked the situation in the city. After a while, he figured out the reason and said to Yunyao, Yao, I was right. This underwater ancient city and this sea area were destroyed by the poison. Yunyao asked with a serious face, Tianqing, are you sure this has something to do with the blood god and the demon race? Ji Tianqing nodded and said coldly, I've been in contact with the poisonous plague in the coastal cities and killed the blood god's son with my own hands. I'm not unfamiliar with the power of calamity. I'm sure this is the work of the blood god and the demon race. Chapter 1247. Yunyao had always believed Ji Tianqing's words without a doubt. However, she frowned in confusion and asked, Tianqing, the son of the blood god, Yin Qi, spread a poisonous plague in the coastal cities. It was a powerful black gas. In this endless eastern sea, I am afraid the black mist would not spread far. I am afraid the poison in the sea water is not the poisonous black qi, right? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, that's right, Yao, you have observed carefully. The poison in this sea is not a poisonous plague, but a form of black water. The black water is extremely poisonous and one drop can kill an elite warrior at the Sky Prime stage. Even if the poisonous black water is mixed in the sea and its toxicity is weakened many times, it can still easily kill living creatures below the Sky Prime stage. I estimate that even the elite warriors and water demons at the Sky Prime stage would not last long after being corroded by the poisonous black water. Yunyao nodded slightly and said thoughtfully, this way, the blood god that spread the poison in this sea is different from Yin Qi. He also carries a different calamity power. Ji Tianqing agreed and said with a cold tone, although the blood god has different calamity power, they are all born from the 3 calamities and 9 tribulations. Each blood god is escorted by elite warriors of the demon clan. Those elite warriors of the demon clan can also use the purple demonic gourd to spread the calamity power. Besides, these blood god were only at the Sky Prime stage when they were born. After they killed a large number of living creatures, they absorbed a huge amount of blood and souls to break into the refined soul stage. I don't know how long the disaster has happened in this sea area, and how powerful is the blood god's son now. Yunyao thought for a moment and said with a solemn expression, Tianqing, we are not familiar with the situation in this sea area. We don't know what happened and it's difficult to solve this problem. I think we should first find the ruler of this sea area and then think of a solution. Okay. Ji Tianqing nodded without hesitation and let the black dragon speed up. In the next few hours, the black dragon traveled at a rapid speed under the sea. The bottom of the ocean for 100,000 miles in radius was almost covered in dead bodies of all kinds of fish and aquatic creatures. Even the few cities that they passed by were piled up with mountains of corpses, becoming uninhabited dead cities. Around 20 hours later, the black dragon flew for 100,000 miles and finally met a few living waterkind powerful beings. They were 4 Sky Origin Stage waterkind warriors, and they looked like human beings. However, their bodies had obvious aquatic characteristics, such as fish scales and fish tails, and so on. They flashed across the bottom of the ocean, heading north as fast as they could. The black dragon stopped them and told them the name of Ji Tianqing, as well as the purpose of their visit. Although the 4 Aqua tribe experts had never heard of Ji Tianqing's name, they were very respectful to Ji Tianqing and Prince Tai after learning that Ji Tianqing was a friend of Prince Tai. After some negotiation, Ji Tianqing found out that the 4 water tribe experts were the commanders of the searching dragon guards in the Black Ink Sea area. The area within a radius of 500,000 miles was the territory of the Black Ink Sea area, which was under the jurisdiction of the Black Ink Dragon King and belonged to the imperial court of the water tribe. There were 150,000 searching dragon guards under the Black Ink Dragon King, who were responsible for patrolling and protecting this area. Since half a month ago, a strong poison of unknown origin appeared in the Black Ink Sea area, which killed hundreds of millions of aquatic creatures in just a few days, causing a huge disaster. In the past half a month, the mysterious strong poison had spread crazily, almost affecting the entire Black Ink Sea area. At least 30 million aquatic creatures were corroded by the strong poison, and had died and turned into skeletons. The remaining 300 million aquatic creatures were also escorted and led by the searching dragon guards, and they left the Black Ink Sea area in batches. The 4 commanders of the searching dragon guards were all candidates to bring up the rear, and they were responsible for searching for the remaining and lost aquatic creatures. Originally, they each led 2,000 searching dragon guards, which made a total of 8,000 people. However, in the 5-day search and rescue process, the 8,000 searching dragon guards were all dead. Even the thousands of aquatic creatures they had rescued were all dead. Now there were only 4 of them left, and they were unable to carry out the mission anymore. They could only leave the Black Ink Sea area at the fastest speed, and go to the neighboring Long Wind Sea area. After hearing the news, Ji Tianqing carefully looked at the 4 commanders of the searching dragon guards. He immediately found that the 4 commanders were also corroded by the strong poisonous black water. Their bodies were already covered with black smoke, and many parts of their skin had been festered, with black blood constantly flowing out. It seems that I was right. Even the Sky Origin Stage powerhouses of the water tribe could not resist the corrosion of the strong poisonous black water. According to their situation, if they don't get rid of the strong poison as soon as possible, I am afraid that they will not live for more than half a month. The 4 commanders also knew this. Their expressions were extremely dejected and pained. Their dim eyes were filled with helplessness and despair. One of them nodded and bowed to Ji Tianqing, "Young Master Ji, the 4 of us have been poisoned, and we will not live for long. This place is hundreds of thousands of miles away from the Long Wind Sea area. If we don't get back in time, we will die on the way. Young Master Ji, please send a message for us. In any case, we have to bring the result and the news back, and report to the Black Ink Dragon King. Even if we are destined to die, we have to die in a meaningful way. Ji Tianqing calmly glanced at the four of them, and he saw that they all had the same expression, and their eyes were very determined. He waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "You don't have to be so depressed. I will take you to the Long Wind Sea area now, and meet with the Black Ink Dragon King." As he said, he waved his hand and put the four of them on the back of the Black Dragon. Then, the Black Dragon carried them through the cold bottom of the sea, and rushed to the Long Wind Sea area as fast as lightning. The Black Dragon was so fast that the four commanders of the searching dragon guards were stunned, and they were also quite excited. There were thousands of different races in the East Sea, and they were all called the aquatic creatures, and they were all under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Court of the Aquatic Creatures. In the East Sea, the Flood Dragon race was the noblest and the most powerful race. The four commanders of the searching dragon guards were just ordinary members of the sea, and they rarely came in contact with the noble Flood Dragon race. They did not dare to imagine that one day, they would be able to ride the noble Black Dragon and travel hundreds of thousands of miles under the sea. Even if the four of them were to die soon, it was still an incomparable glory and something to be proud of. A whole day passed quickly. The Black Dragon finally traveled 140,000 miles, left the poison-shrouded Black Ink Sea area, and entered the Long Wind Sea area. Under the guidance of the four commanders of the searching dragon guards, the Black Dragon rushed to the origin city at the fastest speed. It was an underwater ancient city at the edge of the Long Wind Sea area, and it was also the main city that accommodated millions of people of the Sea Clan. Most of the people of the Sea Clan who evacuated from the Black Ink Sea area fled there. The Black Ink Dragon King and a large number of searching dragon guards also gathered in that ancient city. Everyone thought that they would be safe after escaping from the Black Ink Sea area and arriving at the origin city. Chapter 1248. When Ji Tianqing saw the blood qi in the seawater, he had a bad feeling. It was clearly the blood qi and soul essence of the Water Clan's people, fish, and water demons after they died. Strands of dark red blood qi mixed in the black seawater and kept flowing into the distance. The poisonous black water has already spread to this part of the sea. The situation is probably worse than we expected. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and muttered with a solemn expression. Yunyao nodded and pointed at the ancient city in the darkness ahead. She said, "Tianqing, look. The origin city is shining with magic power. It's obviously protected by a soul-level formation. The Black Ink Dragon King and a large group of searching dragon guards are in that ancient city. It should be fine in the short term. Let's go take a look first." Ji Tianqing nodded and let the Black Dragon swim towards the origin city. When he got closer, he could see clearly that the ancient city under the sea made of reddish-brown rocks was also covered with thick seaweed. Colorful corals grew everywhere in the city. A soul-level formation with a radius of nearly 100 miles protected the entire ancient city like an inverted bowl. The seawater outside the light shield was cold and black, containing deadly poison. The seawater inside the light shield was still pure and light blue. Tens of thousands of Water Clan martial artists, wearing silver armor and holding spears and swords, cruised in the sky above the ancient city and monitored the surroundings. Around 1 million water-kind people crowded in the city, letting out deafening noises. The Black Dragon arrived outside the city gate. The four searching dragon guards took out their identity badges and stated their purpose. Only then were they allowed to enter the city. However, the Black Dragon, Ji Tianqing, and Yunyao's identities were unknown, so the city guards refused to let them enter the origin city. The four searching dragon guards were a little angry and puzzled. They quickly introduced Ji Tianqing's identity and asked the city guards to let them in. However, the city guards were from the origin city and were under the jurisdiction of the Changfeng Sea region. They had nothing to do with the Black Ink Sea region. Of course, they would not listen to the words of the four searching dragon guard commanders and insisted on carrying out the orders of the city lord of Origin City. In desperation, the four searching dragon guards had to apologize to Ji Tianqing and said that they would report this matter to Xianmo Dragon King after entering the city. Ji Tianqing didn't say much and waved his hand, indicating for the four to enter the city. He and Yunyao stood calmly on the Black Dragon's back, waiting patiently. Black Dragon's mood was somewhat gloomy. He said in a resentful tone, "Old Ji, this bunch of stinky fish really don't know what's good for them. How dare they treat us like this? We helped them with good intentions, but they actually refused to let us in. How despicable." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said calmly, "Little Black Dragon, you can't say that. Such a great disaster happened in the Black Ink Sea area, so the waterkind people must be scared to death. Right now, they were out of their wits, and every bush and tree was an enemy. Of course, they would be extremely cautious and wouldn't dare to be careless in the slightest. Don't worry, the four searching dragon guards have already gone to report the news. I believe Xianmo Dragon King is a reasonable person and will soon come to welcome us." Black Dragon was originally feeling indignant for Ji Tianqing, so when he saw that Ji Tianqing didn't care, the resentment in his heart dissipated. Yunyao raised her eyebrows and asked, "Tianqing, have you met Xianmo Dragon King? Does he know you?" Ji Tianqing shook his head. Yunyao suddenly frowned and said with some concern, "Xianmo Dragon King doesn't know you, so he won't believe us. How can he let us in? If Xianmo Dragon King doesn't take us into the city, I'm afraid there's nothing we can do to help the waterkind people get through this crisis. If we're left here all the time, I'm afraid we can only leave, and there's nothing we can do to help the waterkind people." Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. "Believe me, that won't happen. Even if Xianmo Dragon King doesn't take us into the city, I have a communication jade slip here to contact Tai. As long as Tai gives the order, Xianmo Dragon King, the city master of the origin city, will definitely listen to me." Yunyao felt relieved and didn't say anything more. Time passed quietly, and soon, half an hour had passed. Right at this moment, a burst of noise suddenly burst out on the road that connected to the city gate. The waterkind people who crowded on the road were driven away by two groups of armored and sword-carrying guards, and immediately dispersed. The road made of black stones was emptied out, and hundreds of guards stood on both sides of the road with respectful looks. Under the gaze of countless waterkind people, several imposing figures quickly walked through the black stone road and arrived at the tall city gate. There were 4 figures in total, and 3 of them were at the soul refining stage. The weakest middle-aged man was at the 7th level of the sky origin stage. The leader walking in the front was a tall and sturdy young man in a purple robe. His face was stern, and there was a golden dragon horn protruding from his forehead. His skin was also covered with golden dragon scales. Without a doubt, he was the prince of the imperial court, Golden Dragon Tai. The middle-aged man following behind Tai was also tall and sturdy, and his steps were like the wind. His skin was dark, and his eyes were like lightning. His whole body was emitting a noble and domineering aura unique to the dragon race. He was the leader of the imperial court's guards, Black Dragon Longyuan. The third middle-aged man was also a black dragon. He wore a black robe and a dark golden cloak. He was the master of Xianmo Sea region, Xianmo Dragon King. As for the fourth person, he was an ordinary waterkind man, who was at the 7th level of the sky origin stage. He was the city master of the origin city. When Tai arrived at the city gate with Longyuan, Xianmo Dragon King, and the city master of the origin city, all the guards and people near the city gate all knelt down and saluted respectfully. Tai ignored the guards and people around him, and his eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing, who was outside the city's great defensive formation. When he saw that the person was indeed Ji Tianqing, his originally cold and stern expression became much warmer. He actually revealed a faint smile and cupped his hands towards Ji Tianqing, saying, "Brother Tianqing, just now, someone reported that you've come to Origin City." This sovereign still didn't dare to believe it. "I didn't expect you to come to Origin City. We meet again." Hearing Tai's words, Xian Mo Dragon King, the city master of the Origin City, and the guard captain's expressions all changed. They looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. They didn't dare to believe that this human youth not only knew Prince Tai, but also had such a close relationship with him. The noble Prince Tai actually called this person brother. His attitude was very warm. Just an hour ago, the guard captain's attitude was firm and refused to let this person into Origin City. Even an idiot knew that they would not have a good ending after insulting and offending Prince Tai's friend. Thinking of this, the guard captain and the dozen or so guards suddenly turned pale. Their eyes were filled with deep fear. Chapter 1249. Seeing the guards at the city gate kneeling down, the surrounding water tribe people immediately burst into a noisy discussion. Tai also stopped smiling and bowed to Ji Tianqing with a sincere expression, apologizing. "Brother Tianqing, these guards are weak and ignorant. They didn't know that a heaven's chosen like you had arrived, and offended you just now. I apologize to you on their behalf. Please be magnanimous and don't let this matter affect your mood." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "Tai, you know that I won't lower myself to the same level as these shrimp soldiers, so you don't have to be so courteous. They are just following orders, so you don't have to make it too difficult for them. Let's get down to business. You'd better open the defensive formation quickly. We'll talk after we enter the city." Tai nodded when he saw that Ji Tianqing was so magnanimous. He turned to look at City Lord Yuan beside him. With a fierce look in his eyes, he shouted with a dignified tone, "City Lord Yuan, these guards have offended my good brother, and they deserve to be beheaded. However, this is a special time. Since young Master Ji has pleaded for them, I'll give them a lighter punishment. Break their arms and legs, and lock them in the prison. They can only be released after 3 months." City Lord Yuan bowed with a heart full of fear, then immediately sent someone to carry out the order. Not only did the guards not resist, but they also knelt on the ground as if relieved of a heavy burden, thanking Tai for sparing their lives. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao finally understood how strict the rules of the Water Clan were. Then, Black Ink Dragon King waved his hand and unleashed a dazzling golden light, activating the defensive formation. A light door opened on the 5-colored light barrier, and the Black Dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yunyao through the light door, entering Origin City. Countless people and guards on both sides of the road immediately bowed respectfully, welcoming Ji Tianqing into the city. Tai guessed Ji Tianqing's intention, and without wasting any time, he quickly led him into the city and rushed to the City Lord's mansion. The City Lord's mansion of Origin City was located in the center of the city. It was a huge palace built with brown rocks. The style of the cities and buildings of the Water Clan were different from those of the Human Clan and the Monster Clan. They were very special and ancient. Everyone entered the meeting hall. Tai, Ji Tianqing, and Yunyao took their seats. Black Ink Dragon King, City Lord Yuan, and a few Water Tribe generals were all standing respectfully in the main hall. After everyone exchanged greetings and bowed, Tai got down to business and asked Ji Tianqing, "Tianqing, why did you suddenly come to the Eastern Sea and even come to Origin City?" Ji Tianqing explained, "Several months ago, we left the central continent and prepared to head to the Eastern Sea's sinkhole to settle a matter. As they passed by the Eastern Sea, they happened to encounter the demon race's rebellion. They spread a highly toxic plague in the coastal cities, causing a world-shaking disaster. Tens of millions of people were affected, and millions were slaughtered. I helped Divine General Dong Lin uncover the source of the disaster and quelled the poisonous plague before rushing to the Eastern Sea. When I passed through the Xian Mo Sea area, I saw that the sea was highly toxic, and billions of fish and people of the Water Clan died. I guessed that the Demon Clan was causing trouble. After discovering this situation, I planned to help. After all, I know a way to solve the disaster. Coincidentally, I met 4 commanders of the searching dragon guards, so I brought them to Origin City. After listening to his explanation, Tai Yi came to a realization. He was originally filled with worry and anxiety, but when he learned that Ji Tianqing could solve the disaster, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. His eyes were surging with joy. When I learned that a mysterious poison appeared in the Xianmoc area, causing the deaths of countless people, I hurried to deal with this matter. It has been 5 days, I have thought of all kinds of methods, but I am helpless. Tianqing, you actually know a way to solve the source of the disaster. That's great, you came at the right time. This time, you must help me. As long as you can solve this disaster, I and the Imperial Court of the Water Clan will forever remember your kindness. Black Ink Dragon King felt that it was inconceivable. He looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. Young Master Ji, that mysterious poison is all-pervasive and extremely toxic. His Highness Tai Yi and I have tried all kinds of methods, but we still couldn't find any useful clues. What method do you have to solve it? The status of Origin City Lord was low, so he couldn't interrupt at this time. But the stone hanging in his heart was lifted. He looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of surprise and excitement, as if he had seen his savior. Ji Tianqing took a deep look at Tai Yi and said in a low voice, Tai Yi, I believe you also know that the Demon Emperor used an ancient evil method to refine a large number of blood gods. Those blood gods carried the power of disaster and were spreading plagues on the battlefields of various races, causing a terrible disaster. Not only that, the Demon Emperor also sent a large number of elite demon kings to escort the blood gods into the territories of various races, using the disaster to massacre the people. The disaster in the Xianmoc area was caused by the blood gods and the demon race. Tai Yi nodded and said with a solemn expression, that's right, as early as 2 months ago, the frontier battlefield sent back this news. I checked the situation in the Xianmoc area, and it was exactly as you said. It was done by the demon race and the blood gods. However, no one expected that the blood gods would sneak into the hinterland of the East Sea and cause a disaster in our territory. The Xianmoc area has been corroded by a strong poison. At present, more than 50 million people have died, and more than 200 million people have been forced to flee their homes. Moreover, I have investigated and found that the source of the disaster is the mysterious black water. Unfortunately, the black water is spreading very fast in the sea. I can neither stop it nor find a way to deal with it. During this time, the pharmacists of the Imperial Court have been working like crazy, but they still can't make an effective antidote. Now that the poison has spread to the Long Wind area, if we don't find a way to stop it, the disaster will spread further. At that time, more than 100 million people will die because of it. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said in a low voice, these are all minor details. If we want to resolve this disaster, the most direct and effective way is to find the blood gods and kill them. Xianmo Dragon King shook his head and sighed helplessly, young Master Ji, you are right. We also understand this point. However, we have never seen the blood gods, and we don't know their characteristics and flaws. How can we find them? Tai Yi also had the same idea. He nodded with a solemn expression and said, yes, this is the biggest problem we are facing. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said in a serious tone, Tai Yi, I probably know how to find the blood gods, but you have to cooperate with me to resolve this disaster as soon as possible. Tai Yi suddenly became spirited. He nodded without hesitation and said, okay. Tianqing, as long as you can help me find the blood gods, I will listen to your orders. For every hour we delay, the black water will spread thousands of miles and kill hundreds of thousands of people. There is no time to lose. Tianqing, you have to think of a way now. Chapter 1250. Although Tai didn't know what Ji Tianqing was going to do exactly. He immediately ordered Castellan Yuan to do as Ji Tianqing asked. In just a few minutes, Castellan Yuan prepared a secret room and a detailed map of the Longwind Sea for Ji Tianqing. The secret room was under the Castellan's mansion. It was not only hidden but also very safe. Ji Tianqing only brought Yun Yao, Tai, and Long Yuan into the secret room. Black Ink Dragon King and Castellan Yuan could only wait outside and wait for orders. After entering the secret room, Ji Tianqing unrolled the map and spread it on the wide stone table. He stared at the map carefully and pondered with a serious expression. The secret room was very quiet. Tai, Yun Yao, and Long Yuan didn't make a sound for fear of disturbing Ji Tianqing. A moment later, Ji Tianqing finished looking at the map of the entire Longwind Sea and looked up at Tai beside him. He said with a serious expression, Tai, after the poison disaster broke out in the Black Ink Sea, how many people were successfully evacuated? Tai answered honestly, more than 50 million people died, and more than 200 million people were affected. However, less than 80 million people successfully escaped to the Longwind Sea. There was no doubt that more than 100 million people of the Water Clan were scattered to other places. It was unknown whether these people had escaped from the Black Ink Sea or if they were still alive. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked with a serious expression, "Then where did you settle those people?" Tai said in a low voice, "There were too many people who suffered. I divided them into two groups and settled them in the Green Tooth Trench and the Long Mountain Grand Canyon. The Green Tooth Trench is 30,000 miles away from here. It's a huge trench that is 100,000 miles long. No people have ever lived there. The Long Mountain Grand Canyon is a little further, 80,000 miles away. It's also a huge canyon that is tens of thousands of miles long. It's like an abyss that can accommodate tens of millions of people. There are no cities in these two areas. It's always been a paradise for water demons and fish. I settled the people there and sent a large number of experts and searching dragon guards to protect them." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said in a serious tone, "Those experts and searching dragon guards are far from enough. Send Black Ink Dragon King and Long Yuan to guard these two places immediately." Tai was startled and immediately frowned as if he had guessed something. He frowned and looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, "Tianqing, do you suspect that the experts of the Demon Clan and Blood God will sneak into those two camps to cause trouble?" "Of course." Ji Tianqing looked at him seriously and said with an unquestionable tone, "When I was searching for the Blood God in the 100 cities of the East Sea, the Blood God and the Demon Clan had been keeping an eye on the refugee camps. They had been wantonly spreading poisons and plagues that could kill millions of people at once. There were tens of millions of water to kill blood to kill demon s. This TSS was to cause kill. Most importantly, Blood God created all kinds of disasters and killed tens of millions of people in order to absorb their blood and souls to increase his strength. In the Black Ink Sea, more than 50 million water tribe people have died. I estimate that Blood God's strength has reached the soul refining realm." Tai's face turned gloomy and his heart was heavy. "If Blood God's strength has reached the soul refining realm, won't we not be able to resist the poisonous black water?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a serious tone, "Soul refining realm experts will die if they are poisoned by the black water." Tai did not hesitate and immediately gave the order. He said in a dignified tone, "Long Yuan, I order you to rush to the Long Mountain Grand Canyon immediately. Take over the authority and lead 100,000 soldiers. Protect the people no matter what." Long Yuan immediately bowed and obeyed. When he turned and left the secret room and rushed to the Long Mountain Canyon, Tai gave another order to Black Ink Dragon King outside the secret room. Black Ink Dragon King obeyed and left Origin City as fast as he could, rushing to the Black Ink Sea Trench. Soon, the secret room was quiet again. Tai hesitated for a moment, looking as if he wanted to say something. Ji Tianqing saw that and asked, "Tai, if you have any questions, just ask." Tai did not hesitate and quickly asked, "Tianqing, the black dragon you rode in Origin City, was it the little black dragon from before? Yes. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, what's wrong? Is there a problem? Taiyi's eyes flashed and he said in a strange tone, don't you think it's strange that the black dragon has changed so much? Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. It's a little strange, but it had a fortuitous encounter and recently reached the soul refining realm. It's natural for it to change like that, isn't it? No, no, no. Taiyi quickly waved his hand and explained with a serious expression, Tianqing, you don't know the Eastern Sea Scale Dragon clan and think that it's normal. In fact, none of the black dragons under the imperial court would look like that after reaching the soul refining realm. Its current appearance is not that of the Eastern Sea Scale Dragon clan. Ji Tianqing was startled and frowned in confusion. Not the Eastern Sea Scale Dragon clan. Then what kind of clan is it? Taiyi took a deep breath and his eyes flashed. He said in a serious tone, Black Dragon. Divine Black Dragon. Divine Beast Black Dragon. Ji Tianqing narrowed his eyes as a glint flashed across his eyes. He was quite shocked. He knew that the Eastern Sea Scale Dragon clan were all scale dragons, and there was a huge difference between scale dragons and the legendary divine dragons. In ancient times, there was a legend that a snake would live for 100 years to become a snake, 1,000 years to become a scale dragon, and 10,000 years to become a dragon. The legendary dragons were the true divine dragons of the 9 heavens. The dragons of the Eastern Sea Imperial Court were scale dragons. In the past 10,000 years, no one in the Eastern Sea Scale Dragon clan had been able to cultivate into a true dragon. Now, Taiyi was telling him that the little black dragon had revealed its true talent after reaching the soul refining realm. It was not an ordinary scale dragon, but a divine black dragon. This news filled Ji Tianqing's heart with shock and joy. Yunyao also found it unbelievable and was happy and excited. She quickly asked Taiyi, in the entire Tianxian continent's 10,000 years of history, there has never been a true divine dragon. In the ancient legends, the divine dragon's talent and power are unparalleled in the world, and no other clan can match it. Is this true? Taiyi nodded solemnly and said, of course it's true. The ancients used dragons and phoenixes to describe the most outstanding geniuses, and dragons are ranked before phoenixes. The divine dragon is not only the most perfect and powerful clan, but also the most honorable clan. Tianqing, the black dragon has only reached the soul refining realm, 2 levels lower than you. Chapter 1251. Without Taiyi's reminder, Ji Tianqing also knew that the divine dragon's talent was perfect. In terms of cultivation comprehension and the speed at which they increased their strength, no race in the world could compare to the dragons. Now that the black dragon had awakened its divine beast bloodline and revealed the characteristics of the divine dragon, its talent and potential were completely unleashed. Without a doubt, the black dragon would become the most dazzling star in the world, illuminating the sky of this continent. When Taiyi talked about the black dragon, his eyes shone with a bright light, revealing a strong sense of envy and desire. Although it was a noble golden dragon, it was only a flood dragon. It still needed to cultivate for thousands of years before it could become a true dragon. If the black dragon was not Ji Tianqing's pet, he would have snatched it long ago. Even if he did not have any evil thoughts, the Imperial Court of the Aquatics would use the most forceful method to take the black dragon back. After all, the black dragon had just awakened its divine beast bloodline and was still very weak. It was only at the first tier of the soul refining realm. However, the black dragon belonged to Ji Tianqing. Taiyi had to keep his promise and not make an enemy out of his brother. Then, Taiyi told Ji Tianqing and Yunyao about the legend of the divine beast black dragon. It is recorded in the history books of the dragon clan that a divine dragon has not appeared in the mysterious sky continent for tens of thousands of years. The divine dragon of the 9 heavens, who can control the gods, does not exist on this continent. Leaving this continent and pursuing the ultimate realm of martial arts is the dream of all martial artists. However, among the billions of martial artists, only a few can realize their dreams. Famous geniuses like you and me might not be able to achieve our dreams. However, it is different now. Tianqing, you have the help of the divine beast Black Dragon. In the future, you will definitely be able to leave this continent and break free from the cage and shackles. You will see the wider world and strive for the divine realm of martial arts. Tai Yi's tone was very excited. When he said this, his blood was boiling. He was extremely envious of Ji Tianqing. Fortunately, he was the prince of the aquatics and had a noble status. He had always been cold and calm. If it were an ordinary person, they would have gone crazy with envy and jealousy. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded, comforting him. Tai Yi, there's no need to be so depressed. You and I are both the top geniuses of the continent. If I can leave this continent and enter the mysterious Shenwu continent, then I believe that you can achieve your wish as well. Thank you for your kind words. I hope so. Tai Yi smiled and nodded. After that, everyone changed the topic and stopped talking about the Black Dragon. Tai Yi Ji Tianqing asked, Tianqing, apart from letting Black Ink Dragon King and Long Yuan protect the 2 refugee camps, what other plans and arrangements do you have? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while, then said seriously, we are in the open, while the Blood God and the Demon Clan are hiding in the dark. This is not good for us. However, the Blood God and the Demon Clan didn't know that I was here, nor did they know that I knew the Blood God's characteristics and purpose. Therefore, I am sure that they will attack the Green Tooth Trench or the Long Mountain Grand Canyon. Just relying on Black Ink Dragon King and Long Yuan to protect the refugees is far from enough. We need to hurry over and guard the place. Tai Yi thought for a while and then said, the situation in the Long Mountain Grand Canyon is more complicated, and it's further from here. I will go there personally. I will oversee the situation there, and with Long Yuan assisting me, it will be easier for me to do things. Tianqing, you and Yunyao will go to the Green Tooth Trench, which is closer. I will send a message to Black Ink Dragon King and have him listen to your orders. You will be in charge of everything. Also, Origin City's City Lord will guard Origin City. If anything happens, you will need to provide timely assistance. Tai Yi was more familiar with the Water Tribe situation, and he was good at arranging troops and taking charge of the overall situation. He arranged these tasks one by one, appearing to have a well-thought-out plan. He was methodical and had the air of a general. Ji Tianqing had no objections and nodded in agreement. All right, we will do as you say. After discussing the plan, the two exchanged transmission jade slips. If there was any situation or news, they would use the jade slips to inform each other. After everything was ready, Tai Yi took the lead and left Origin City, heading straight for the Long Mountain Grand Canyon. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he sat cross-legged in the secret chamber, preparing to meditate and cultivate. Seeing this, Yunyao asked doubtfully, Tianqing, aren't we going to the Green Tooth Trench? Are you going to cultivate for a few more days? Ji Tianqing shook his head lightly and said in a serious tone, of course we have to go to the Green Tooth Trench, and we have to go there as soon as possible. However, there is something that we have to clarify as soon as possible. Previously, when I was in the 100 cities of the Eastern Sea, I used the Heaven-Mending Orb to devour all the poisonous plagues, so the Heaven-Mending Orb's power is very weak. For the past half a month, the Heaven-Mending Orb has been purifying those poisonous plagues, and now it is finally done. The strange thing is, not only did the Heaven-Mending Orb recover its previous luster, its power has also increased a lot, and it is continuously pouring mysterious power into my soul. Since yesterday, my soul's power has been constantly increasing, and my strength is also steadily increasing. Yunyao revealed a surprised expression and asked in disbelief, the Heaven-Mending Orb actually has this kind of effect? Purifying the poisonous plagues and increasing your strength? Isn't this too heaven-defying? Tianqing, you have to be more careful. Carefully examine the power that the heaven-mending orb is channeling and see if it has any negative effects on you. After all, that orb is very mysterious. We don't know its origin and specific effects at all. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I will carefully examine it." After saying that, he did not say anything else and quickly sat down to meditate and carefully observe the situation of his soul. In his mind, there was a cloud-like chaotic area, and a golden sword of soul floated in it. Around the golden sword of soul, there were 3 blazing white swords of soul. They were all divine weapons filled with soaring sword intent. And above the golden sword of soul, there was a milky white orb. It was the heaven-mending orb. From the mysterious heaven-mending orb, a blazing white pillar of light extended and connected to the golden sword of soul, continuously pouring in a majestic mysterious power. This mysterious power was very similar to the power of the soul. It made Ji Tianqing's soul feel comfortable without any discomfort. He carefully observed for a moment, but did not sense the aura of the devil race or the power of calamity. And his golden sword of soul was very close to this mysterious white light. It felt joy and intimacy from the depths of his soul. Ji Tianqing could not see any clues or sense any danger, so he ended his inner vision and channeling. As soon as he finished his meditation and stood up, Yun Yao looked at him with a face full of concern and asked, "Tianqing, how is it? Is there any problem?" "There is no abnormality. There should be no problem." Ji Tianqing shook his head and persuaded, "I once read a secret scroll of the Tianxian continent. It recorded an ancient myth. According to the ancient book, the gods of different races clashed and broke the sky, inadvertently connecting to another world. Because of this, the devil race escaped from that world and swarmed to the Tianxian continent. The heaven-mending orb in my body seems to be a treasure of a powerful god in the 9 heavens. It was borrowed by the gods to fix the hole in the sky." Chapter 1252. Yun Yao had only heard Ji Tianqing mention the heaven-mending pearl, but she didn't know much about it. Now that she knew the origin of this item, she was shocked but also relieved. After the two finished their preparations, they walked out of the secret room and quickly left Origin City. Outside the city, Ji Tianqing let out the black dragon and rode it with Yun Yao, rushing towards the Green-Tooth Trench. From Origin City to the Green-Tooth Trench, there were no signs of the Water Tribe citizens, only countless bones and corpses on the bottom of the sea. The deadly poison that filled the seawater, as well as strands of blood qi, were spreading and flowing continuously. Yun Yao silently observed the situation at the bottom of the sea and frowned for a long time. Before they reached the Green-Tooth Trench, a thought appeared in her mind and she couldn't help but say to Ji Tianqing, "Tianqing, currently, more than 50 million Water Tribe citizens have died in the Black Ink Sea region. If the blood god swallowed the blood energy of these citizens, then not only would it break through to the soul refinement realm, it would also reach the 6th or 7th level of the soul refinement realm, right?" Ji Tianqing was startled and nodded. "According to common sense, it should be so. But we haven't seen the blood god yet, so we can't be sure." Yun Yao shook her head and said with certainty, "I don't think so. The Water Tribe is different from the human tribe. The Water Tribe is a cold-blooded race and their cultivation system is different from the human tribe. The blood energy of the Water Tribe is much weaker than that of the human tribe. If the blood god swallowed the blood energy of 50 million Water Tribe citizens, it would only be equivalent to swallowing 10 million human tribe citizens." Ji Tianqing's eyes lit up and he nodded, "That makes sense. If that's the case, then the blood god's strength is at most at the 2nd or 3rd level of the soul refinement realm. It won't be ridiculously strong." Yun Yao nodded slightly and said calmly, "This is only the current strength. If the blood god continues to kill tens of millions of Water Tribe citizens, its strength will definitely increase dramatically. Don't worry, we will personally guard the Green-Tooth Trench. We won't let the blood god have a chance," Ji Tianqing said confidently. A quarter of an hour later, the Black Dragon arrived at the Green-Tooth Trench. When they were still dozens of miles away, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao saw a huge chasm in the dark seabed ahead of them. It was a north-south trench about 100 miles wide, and was said to be tens of thousands of miles long. This mysterious oceanic trench had existed since ancient times and had been preserved to this day. No one knew how this trench was formed. But on the surface, it looked very much like a huge sword mark left behind by a deity slashing the bottom of the sea with a sword. On both sides of the trench were rugged reefs, colorful coral reefs, and lush aquatic plants. Large numbers of fishes and sea monsters gathered in this place, but after tens of millions of aquatic creatures migrated to this place, those fishes and sea monsters all fled. The Black Dragon twisted its huge body and quickly dived into the trench, swimming toward the depths of the trench. The trench was bottomless, and the rocky cliffs on both sides were like cliffs, covered with clumps of seaweed and strips of corals. The rocky cliffs contained rich mineral resources that were sparkling, bringing a glimmer of light to the dark trench. The Black Dragon dived almost 100 miles deep into the sea before it reached the deepest part of the trench and saw the situation at the bottom. The bottom of the wide trench was made of extremely hard black rocks. Rugged black rocks were everywhere, protruding and stacking irregularly. The Black Dragon swam forward for thousands of miles before a series of noises came from the front, breaking the tranquility of the trench. When they got closer, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao finally saw that the place where the victims of the disaster were gathered was right in front of them. Groups of water-kind warriors, who were wearing armors and holding weapons, had been patrolling around the refugee camp. Inside the refugee camp, the aquatic creatures were gathered in groups of 3 to 5, discussing with each other, or huddling inside the rocks. There were no temporary houses in this area. There were only some scattered caves and natural rock clusters for the aquatic creatures to live in. Ji Tianqing released his god soul power and probed into the depths of the trench. He saw hundreds of thousands of aquatic creatures gathered in an area with a radius of dozens of miles. Everyone was filled with worry and depression. The refugee camp was filled with an atmosphere of sadness and despair. The discussions, cries, and quarrels of the people gathered into a flood of sound waves, echoing in the trench. Seeing this, Shi Yan and Yun Yao were also affected. They were depressed and anxious. At the very least, the human refugees have built houses and set up defensive formations. However, these aquatic creatures can only gather in this trench. They don't even have a place to hide. If the blood god sneaks into this place and releases the poisonous black water, the consequences will be unimaginable. Ji Tianqing stood on the back of the Black Dragon, looking down at the aquatic creatures in the depths of the trench and speaking with a serious face. Yun Yao nodded and said in a low voice, "The aquatic creatures are different from the human race. They don't need houses or buildings to survive in the trench for a long time. The bottom of the sea is their home. This trench is too huge, and tens of millions of people are affected by the disaster. How difficult is it to build a defensive formation? Without the protection of the soul-level defensive formation, with only those aquatic creatures patrolling, the defensive formation is useless. Even if the blood god doesn't come here to create a disaster, the poisonous black water will still cause a great number of casualties." Ji Tianqing didn't say anything else. He rode the Black Dragon and moved back and forth in the trench, heading to the center of the refugee camp. A quarter of an hour later, the Black Dragon had moved forward for over 1,000 miles and finally found Xian Mo Dragon King. Xian Mo Dragon King had dug a huge cave on the rock wall of the trench, which served as a temporary command center for the refugee camp. When Ji Tianqing arrived, Xian Mo Dragon King had just gathered over 30 aquatic generals to discuss the defense plan of the refugee camp. Seeing Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao arrive, Xian Mo Dragon King was obviously relieved. He announced in front of everyone, "Generals, young Master Ji is the #1 genius of the continent, and is also a good brother of Prince Tai Yi. Prince Tai Yi has just given the order that young Master Ji will personally guard the Green-Tooth Trench. Everyone and I will follow his orders and arrangements. All the generals didn't dare to have any objection. They immediately knelt down and bowed to Ji Tianqing, and shouted in unison, "Greetings, young Master Ji. We will follow young Master Ji's order." Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time. He said with a dignified voice, "When I came here, I saw the situation of the refugee camp. The defense force is empty, and the situation of the people is terrible. We must start to build the defensive formation right away, so that we can protect the people and avoid a disaster. There are over 20 million people, occupying at least 2,000 miles of land. We must build 20 Soul-level defensive formations." When Mo Dragon King and the other generals heard this, they all showed a troubled look and started to discuss. "Young Master Ji, this task is too difficult. It can't be done in a short time. It will take at least 2 days to build one Soul-level defensive formation. 20 of them will take at least a month. Young Master Ji, we won't have enough time. If we spend more than a month to build the defensive formations, I'm afraid that all the people will be dead before the defensive formations are finished." Seeing that everyone was against it, Ji Tianqing glanced at them with a dignified look, and ordered with a resolute and decisive tone, "This is my order. No one can disobey it, or they will be beheaded. I will build the defensive formation myself, and with the help of Yun Yao, Mo Dragon King and Black Dragon, the foundation and framework of the Soul-level defensive formation can be built quickly." Chapter 1253. Ji Tianqing's words made Mo Dragon King and the other generals dumbfounded. "Finish the mission in 3 days? Isn't that too much? Young Master Ji, please forgive me for speaking bluntly. This mission is impossible. It should have taken more than a month to finish the mission. If you can finish it in 3 days, it will be a miracle." Mo Dragon King and the other generals stared at Ji Tianqing, hoping that he would take back his words. However, Ji Tianqing didn't change his expression. He shouted, "It's about the lives of more than 20 million people. Even if the mission is as difficult as climbing to the sky, it must be completed. You are all Water Tribe soldiers. If you can't even protect the people under your command, you might as well commit suicide. Military orders must be obeyed. Carry it out immediately." With that, he led Yun Yao and the Black Dragon out of the cavern, heading outside. Mo Dragon King and the other generals were shocked by his imposing manner and words. They didn't dare to say anything. After all, Ji Tianqing was the commander, but he took the lead to carry out the mission. Even if the mission was extremely difficult and impossible to finish, no one dared to say anything. Everyone was hoping that Ji Tianqing could really create a miracle. With that in mind, Mo Dragon King and the other generals immediately went to gather all the Sky Origin Stage soldiers. After about half an hour, all the Sky Origin Stage powerhouses in the Green Tooth Trench were gathered in front of Ji Tianqing. Including more than 30 generals, there were more than 50 Sky Origin Stage powerhouses. Ji Tianqing started from the south of the trench. He used a powerful formation to set up the base of the formation at the bottom of the trench. He was going to build a defensive formation. The formation he was going to set up was called the Blackwater North Pole Formation. It was a low-grade soul-level formation with the help of the black water of the North Pole. The Green Tooth Trench was located in the northeast of the East Sea. There was an endless amount of seawater that could provide the black water of the North Pole. Once the formation was set up successfully, it could last for at least 100 years, unless the seawater in the area dried up. Without a doubt, this formation was most suitable to be set up in the Green Tooth Trench. The structure was not complicated, and the power of the formation was not ordinary. In order to speed up the construction of the formation, Ji Tianqing even took out over 10,000 energy stones and tens of rare and precious gemstones from his spatial ring. With the help of Black Dragon, Yun Yao, and Black Ink Dragon King, it only took him an hour to set up the base and structure of the North Pole Formation. The rest of the work was left to the 50 Sky Origin Stage cultivators. They would fill in the veins of the formation until it was finished. It was easy for Sky Origin stage cultivators to do it. More than 50 Heaven Origin stage cultivators worked together and completed the task in less than 2 hours. When the first Mystic Water North Pole Array was successfully activated, the depths of the dark trench shone with brilliant gold and silver brilliance. An icy blue light shield covered an area of 100 miles, protecting the millions of aquatic creatures. In just over 2 hours, everyone had set up a soul-level grand array. This was definitely a miracle. All the generals and civilians witnessed the birth of a miracle with their own eyes. They were excited and cheered. At the same time, Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, Black Dragon, and the rest had finished setting up the base and structure of the second Mystic Water North Pole Array. More than 50 Sky Origin stage cultivators did not dare to waste any time. They all rushed to complete the second formation excitedly. Next, they set up one formation after another in the trench at a speed of one formation every 2 hours. Originally, the trench was filled with sadness and desperation. Tens of millions of civilians were depressed, waiting for death to come. However, when they saw the formations rising from the ground one after another, it was as if they saw the hope of life. Their eyes were lit with hope. Time passed quickly. Batch after batch of aquatic creatures entered the newly built Mystic Water North Pole Array and waited peacefully. In the hearts of the civilians, the Soul-Level Grand Array and the Soul-Level Grand Array were invincible protection. As long as they were protected by the Soul-Level Grand Array, they would be safe even if disaster struck. Only Ji Tianqing, Tai, and the rest knew the truth. They would not spread it. Once the 50 million civilians knew the truth, it would definitely lead to an uncontrollable riot. The consequences would be severe. Before they knew it, 24 hours had passed. In a day, 12 Mystic Water North Pole Arrays had emerged from the depths of the trench. 12 million civilians were protected. Ji Tianqing was mainly in charge of setting up the base and structure of the formations. He was using up a lot of his mana and mind. He was getting more and more tired. His mana and soul were weakening rapidly. He was so tired that his face was pale and he was covered in sweat. Yin Yao felt sorry for him. She tried to persuade him to stop and rest several times. However, he persevered. Even if he was exhausted, he had to set up the formations as fast as he could. Finally, another day had passed. A full 48 hours was not a long time for the commoners, and it passed very quickly. However, for Ji Tianqing and the generals, it was a torturous process. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing had succeeded in creating a miracle. He had set up 20 Mystic Water North Pole Arrays in a row. Unfortunately, he was so tired that his body was limp. His mana was almost depleted. His soul was so exhausted that he was about to pass out. Yin Yao, Xian Mo Dragon King, and the generals were not as desperate as him. However, they were also panting heavily. Their minds and energy were very weak. When the 20 Mystic Water North Pole Arrays were set up, 20 million civilians were transferred into the Grand Array. When they were protected, everyone burst into cheers. Over 20 million civilians and over 50 Sky Origin stage warriors were all shouting and cheering Ji Tianqing's name. Everyone was shocked by this inconceivable miracle, and they prostrated themselves in worship of Ji Tianqing. Young Master Ji, you are indeed the #1 genius of the continent. You are a rare genius. In just 2 days, you have set up 20 soul-level Grand Arrays. This is definitely a miracle that has never happened before. No wonder young Master Ji was so insistent and gave the order so confidently. It turns out that he really does have the strength to do so. I used to know that Prince Tai Yi was the #1 genius of the Water Tribe. No other geniuses in the world could compare with him. However, after seeing young Master Ji's horrifying power, I know that there is always someone better than you. It is our honor to fight side by side with young Master Ji and set up the Grand Arrays for the civilians. Young Master Ji, on behalf of the millions of people in the Xianmo Sea, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you. You are the savior of the Xian Moc, a great hero. Under the leadership of Xian Mo Dragon King, the 50 Heaven Origin Stage cultivators and millions of civilians all knelt down to thank Ji Tianqing. Chapter 1254. The Black-Inked Dragon King and the 50 Sky Origin Stage soldiers admired Ji Tianqing to the extreme. The 20 million people who were affected by the disaster were also grateful to Ji Tianqing and sang his praises. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were both excited and they saw the worshipping scene in the trench. They felt a strong sense of pride in their hearts. Ji Tianqing was also full of emotions. He felt that all the effort he had put in was worth it. However, his spiritual power were almost exhausted. He needed to rest and adjust his breathing. He only said a few words to the Black-Inked Dragon King and then quickly returned to the temporary command post on the cliff. He found a secret room to meditate and cultivate. He sat in the secret room and took a few soul-level elixirs and consumed a lot of spiritual stones to recover his spiritual power. As for the spiritual power, it was hard to recover in a short period of time by meditating and cultivating. Luckily, he had the heaven-mending orb, which continuously poured in the mysterious white light to replenish his spiritual power. He believed that it would take at most 3 days for him to replenish and recover the magic power and soul energy he had consumed. After Ji Tianqing meditated and cultivated, the Black-Inked Dragon King, Yunyao and the Black Dragon still didn't dare to relax and rest. They took the elixirs to recover their spiritual power and then patrolled around the trench to monitor the situation outside. They didn't dare to lower their guard. They had to be cautious. About 20 hours later, the seawater around the trench started to turn black. The seawater became colder and darker. Apparently, the poisonous black water was coming. The patrolling Sky Origin Stage soldiers immediately reported to the Black-Inked Dragon King when they saw this. When the Black-Inked Dragon King heard the news, his face suddenly changed. He became nervous and his spirit was tense. He hurriedly ordered the guards in the 20 formations to work together to activate the power of the Mystic Water North Pole Formation and resist the corrosion of the poisonous black water with all their might. The blue light shield of the formation became brighter and brighter. Its defensive power was also strengthened. Even though the poisonous black seawater kept eroding the light shield of the formation, it couldn't penetrate the formation in a short period of time. Seeing this scene, Black-Inked Dragon King and the other generals heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did the hearts of the more than 20 million people settle back into their stomachs. They were even more grateful to Ji Tianqing. Unknowingly, 2 days had passed. The guards and martial practitioners took turns to inject true essence into the Mystic Water North Pole Formation to maintain its power. The poisonous black water was unable to seep into the formation, and the people in the formation were safe and sound. The atmosphere in the trench calmed down, and the people were no longer worried about their lives. Many people were even fantasizing and discussing that the poisonous black water wouldn't last for long. In at most half a month, the poisonous black water would fade away. As long as everyone persevered for half a month, they would be able to leave the Green-Tooth Trench and return to their homes in the Black Ink Sea region. The situation had stabilized, and everything was in order. Ji Tianqing also ended his cultivation. His magic power and divine soul were restored to their peak state. He walked out of the temporary command post and personally walked around the trench twice to check the defensive power of the 20 formations. Only when he saw that the formation was intact and that the poison was unable to penetrate the light shield of the formation did he feel relieved. However, a few hours later, when he was having a meeting with the Black-Inked Dragon King, he suddenly received a communication jade slip. The communication jade slip was wrapped in a bright white light. It quickly flew in front of him and landed in his palm. After the white light faded, a dark green jade slip appeared in his hand. When he saw the jade slip clearly, his expression changed and he frowned. Because this was the communication jade slip he had left for Tai Yi. He had a bad feeling in his heart. He quickly released his divine soul power and entered the jade slip to check the message. He saw that there was only one short sentence in the jade slip, and the tone was very urgent. Tianqing, the blood god's son has sneaked into the canyon. The disaster has begun. Come and help. When he saw this message, Tianqing's expression changed drastically. His eyes flashed with a cold light. I guessed right. The blood god's son has really invaded the Long Mountain Canyon. He had already predicted that the Green Tooth Trench and the Long Mountain Canyon were the targets of the blood god's son. He did his best and only used 2 days to set up 20 defensive arrays in the Green Tooth Trench. As long as the blood god's son was not stupid, he would not choose to attack the Green Tooth Trench. The games would not make up for the losses. And the Long Mountain Canyon was the only choice for the blood god's son. The communication jade slip from Tai Yi was also within his expectations. He was not surprised at all. Tianqing was only stunned for a moment, and then he immediately put away the jade slip and walked out with large strides. As he walked out, he ordered in a deep voice, Black Ink Dragon King, I leave the Green Tooth Trench to you. Even if you have to sacrifice your life, you have to protect this place. Black Ink Dragon King's expression changed. He immediately got up and asked with concern, Young Master Ji, what happened? Has His Highness been attacked? Tianqing walked out of the temporary command post and said in a low voice, the demon race has invaded the Long Mountain Canyon. The disaster has broken out. I have to go and help as soon as possible. Black Ink Dragon King said without hesitation, Young Master Ji, I will go with you. I swear to protect His Highness Tai Yi. Nonsense. You stay here. Tianqing stared at him and shouted in a dignified tone, protecting the Green Tooth Trench is your mission. If anything happens to the people, you will be punished. Black Ink Dragon King suddenly stopped. He looked embarrassed and didn't dare to say anything more. Tianqing didn't stop. He summoned the black dragon and took Yunyao on its back. They flew out of the Green Tooth Trench as fast as lightning. Swoosh! The black dragon also burst out with its strongest power. It turned into a mysterious black light and carried Tianqing and Yunyao to the Long Mountain Canyon at the fastest speed. At the same time, the Long Mountain Canyon tens of thousands of miles away was in an extremely chaotic disaster. This canyon was located in the depths of the sea. It was located in the mountains. In the eyes of ordinary people, the bottom of the sea was flat or covered with mud and sand. But that was only the shallow sea area. In the deep sea area, there were also flat lands, mountains, trenches, and other mysterious terrains. Around the Long Mountain Canyon was a mountain range with a radius of 80,000 miles. Hundreds of underwater mountain ranges and peaks slept forever in the cold and dark bottom of the sea. There were no plants, flowers, or trees on those magnificent mountain peaks. There were only bare rocks. Dark green algae grew on the rock layer, and colorful coral reefs covered it. In the depths of the mountain range, there was a huge canyon tens of thousands of miles long. It was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. It was dark and mysterious. This mysterious huge canyon was like a chasm created by a god with a giant axe. It split the mountains tens of thousands of miles in half. The deep canyon was hundreds of miles deep. There wasn't a trace of light for many years. Only the smartest fish and the most powerful sea demons would reside here. Since 10 days ago, more than 20 million people of the sea tribe migrated here. The entire canyon became a refugee camp. Chapter 1255. When the Black Dragon carried Tianqing and Yunyao into the Long Mountain Grand Canyon, what they saw was a tragic scene. In the deep and dark canyon, the seawater was black and contained a terrifying poison. A large number of aquatic tribe citizens were running in a hurry in the canyon, desperately trying to escape. However, as they ran, their bodies were corroded by the poisonous seawater and were corroding at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few seconds, batch after batch of aquatic tribe citizens were corroded into black blood and dirty water, leaving only skeletons at the bottom of the sea. On the ground of the canyon, hundreds of thousands of white skeletons were piled up into small mountains. It was a shocking sight. The screams and wails of the citizens, the piles of skeletons, and the thick smell of blood in the seawater outlined a tragic scene of disaster. Under the corrosion of the poisonous black water, both the unarmed aquatic tribe citizens and the armored aquatic tribe guards were equally weak. They had no power to resist at all and could only die in despair and pain. Under Ji Tianqing's urging, the Black Dragon used its fastest speed and rushed into the depths of the Long Mountain Grand Canyon. Along the way, Ji Tianqing's soul detected two figures that were as black as ink hiding in a secluded corner of the Grand Canyon, secretly releasing deadly black water. He immediately realized that they must be the elite demon lords who were escorting the blood god. Seeing this, the Black Dragon's eyes flashed coldly. It swung its dragon tail and rushed over. Swoosh! It rushed to the top of a pile of jagged rocks and looked down at the rocks. The two elite demon lords disguised themselves as black squids and were hiding in the rocks. They were using the purpline demonic gourd to release endless black water. Roar! The Black Dragon's eyes shone fiercely as it let out a low roar. The two elite demon lords were immediately alerted. They quickly put away the purpline demonic gourd and wanted to escape underground. The Black Dragon opened its mouth without hesitation and spat out two black water pillars. They carried the power of the northern underworld black water and blasted at the two demon lords. In the blink of an eye, the two terrifying northern underworld black water pillars slammed into the rock cluster, covering an area with a radius of thousands of feet. Boom! Boom! Amidst the deafening noise, the pitch-black rocks on the ground were shattered into pieces, turning into gravel that covered the sky and the earth, splashing in all directions. The two elite demon kings could not escape the fate of being killed by the northern underworld black water pillar. The two of them didn't have time to change back to their demon king forms before they were blasted into pieces by the powerful northern underworld black water and scattered in the sea. Even though they were all at the 8th level of Sky Origin stage, and they knew the demonic arts, they could use all kinds of powerful martial skills and demonic skills, however, all of this was useless. Under the divine beast Black Dragon's northern underworld Blackwater, they were as weak as ants and were instantly killed. Within a radius of 3,000 meters, all the rocks, which were 10 times harder than steel, disappeared. A huge crater was left in the ground, and the ground was still trembling, stirring up countless stones and dust. The seawater within a radius of 5 kilometers had turned murky, making it impossible to see anything clearly. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and grabbed the purpline magic gourds that were scattered in the sea. The Black Dragon turned around and rushed into the depths of the canyon to find Tai and Long Yuan. Ji Tianqing stood on the dragon's back, holding the purpline magic gourd in his left hand and urging the power of the heaven-mending orb with his right hand, releasing a dense mysterious white light. The white light quickly swallowed the poisonous black water in the magic gourd, turning it into wisps of black chi that all flowed into the heaven-mending orb. After a short 100 breaths, when the Black Dragon rushed to the center of the refugee camp, Ji Tianqing had also swallowed all the poisonous black water in the purpline magic gourd. He looked down at the refugee camp below and saw a few defensive formations scattered around. Those formations were all low-grade soul-level formations, covering a radius of dozens of miles. There were no less than 1 million people of the sea race crowded inside. The people inside the formations saw with their own eyes that the people outside the formations were dying tragically at an extremely fast speed, turning into piles of white bones. Everyone was terrified, panicked, and desperate, making a huge commotion. The dazzling light barrier of the formations couldn't bear the burden because too many people were stuffed inside. In addition to the corrosion and infiltration of the poisonous black water, the light barrier of the formations dimmed and was on the verge of collapse. Clearly, Tai and Long Yuan had set up several soul-level formations to protect the people after guarding the canyon of Long Mountain. Unfortunately, their attainments and formations were not as heaven-defying as Ji Tianqing's. In just a few days, they could only set up a few formations to protect close to 10 million people of the sea race. The remaining 10 million people, without the protection of the formations, could only die tragically when the disaster erupted. What a miserable scene! Corpses littered the ground and blood flowed like water. Ji Tianqing's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, but there was nothing he could do. The entire canyon was in chaos, and the poisonous black water was everywhere within 10,000 miles. More than 10 million people died one after another, emitting a dark red blood mist that covered the sky and dyed the water in the canyon red. He anxiously searched the refugee camp, but he couldn't find Tai in Long Yuan. Of course, he couldn't find any trace of the blood god or the elite demon kings either. Yin Yao's face was very gloomy, and she asked anxiously, "Tianqing, what should we do? Should we save the people first?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said helplessly, "How can we save them? The entire canyon is covered by the poisonous black water, and more than 10 million people need to be saved. How can we save them? The most important thing now is to find Tai and Long Yuan as soon as possible and find the blood god." Then, he ordered the black dragon, "Little black dragon, continue to the depths of the canyon. You must find Tai." The black dragon obeyed and immediately sped up towards the depths of the canyon. An hour later, it had flown 6,000 miles away from the refugee camp. At this time, it suddenly saw the black water in front of it, flashing with colorful magic power. There were also bursts of muffled sounds, as well as the fluctuations of boundless mana, coming from the seawater. Clearly, there were soul refinement realm cultivators fighting in front of it. Ji Tianqing's eyes lit up, and he looked forward expectantly. Without his order, the black dragon sped up and headed straight for the sea. In the blink of an eye, the black dragon had traveled hundreds of miles and arrived at the edge of the battlefield. In the dark canyon, there were two groups of powerful cultivators fighting with their lives on the line. One of them was a water tribe cultivator, and the leader was a 1,000-meter-long dark golden flood dragon. Its body was huge and muscular, and it was covered in a layer of golden light. It kept releasing powerful secret techniques of the dragon tribe, and it looked very domineering. The other soul refinement realm cultivator fighting side by side with it was a 1,000-meter-long black flood dragon. It kept spitting out black dragon breath and attacked with all its might. These two flood dragons were Tai and Long Yuan. Chapter 1256. Ji Tianqing could tell at a glance that the ever-changing black mist was the blood god's son. The 4 demon race experts were all escorting the blood god's son. What surprised him was that there were only 3 elite demon kings among the 4 demon race experts. The leader was the strongest, reaching the 4th level of the spirit refining realm. Such strength was enough to become a demon commander in the demon race. This person was 4 meters tall, dark all over, and strong like a bull. 2 long curved horns protruded from his forehead. His nostrils were flat, and his mouth was wide. Black mist surged all over his body, giving off powerful demon chi. He fought side by side with the blood god, forcing Tai and Long Yuan to retreat. They weren't a match at all. Tai was weaker, only at the 1st level of the spirit refining realm. But while Long Yuan was fighting, he was still carefully protecting him. Therefore, the two sides had been fighting for a long time, but Tai had only been lightly injured. Long Yuan's injuries were very serious, and he looked miserable. His 1,000-meter-long black dragon body was covered in wounds and holes of various sizes, revealing the dragon bones and internal organs inside. Dark red blood continuously gushed out from the wound, dyeing the surrounding seawater red. Other than Tai and Long Yuan, there were 4 other Sky Origin Realm Water Race generals beside them. They were fighting with the other 3 elite demon kings, and it was very dangerous. They could die at any time. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing rode on the black dragon and charged toward the blood god and the demon marshal at lightning speed. Kill! Without needing Ji Tianqing to say anything, he pulled out the sword of burial of heaven, roared, and slashed at the blood god. Drawl, the sword of burial of heaven suddenly shone with dazzling cold light and slashed out diagonally from bottom to top. The cold light of the sword, 30 meters long, slashed at the blood god with a sharp power that could destroy everything. With a muffled bang, the ever-changing black fog was cut into pieces by the sword light and spread in all directions. Yunyao took out her treasured sword and shot out dozens of bright silver moon sword auras towards the ox-head demon commander. The black dragon also charged forward without any regard for its own safety. It waved its huge dragon claws and spat out a jet of northern underworld black water, charging towards the demon commander. The ox-head demon commander sensed that something was wrong. His expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly stopped attacking Long Yuan and retreated. But he was still a bit slow. As soon as he dodged Yun Yao's sword light, he was hit by the jet of black water and flew away with a bang. The terrifyingly powerful northern underworld black water pillar shattered his magical energy shield on the spot, shattering the skin all over his body. A jet of dark blood spurted out from his mouth. This result shocked him, and the blood god looked at the demon commander, looked at Black Dragon. They had never imagined that a mere first-level soul-refining realm Black Dragon would be able to unleash such a powerful move. This was simply an inconceivable miracle. The ox-head demon commander retreated 1,000 feet away and immediately focused on fighting the demon commander and Yun Yao. The demon commander and Yun Yao didn't give him a chance to breathe. They rushed over with all their might and launched a storm of attacks. Meanwhile, Ji Tianqing and Tai were locked in a fierce battle with Blood God Sun. The Blood God Sun was sliced into pieces by Ji Tianqing's sword, but it quickly gathered back together and condensed into a 30-meter-tall black giant demon. It looked like a ferocious demonic beast with 4 wings and 2 pairs of sharp claws. There was also a horn on its head, which kept surging with dark red light. It looked extremely evil and powerful. It probably saw that Long Yuan was the most severely injured, and he was the easiest to kill. When it condensed its body again, it appeared at the side of the dragon abyss like a ghost. It released 3 thick ink-black light pillars and blasted toward the dragon abyss. Ji Tianqing and Tai could see that the blood god was very cunning. It wanted to kill Long Yuan first, and then deal with them. Unfortunately, even if they saw through the blood god's intention, it was too late to stop it. Long Yuan sensed that the situation was not good. He dodged 2 jets of black light as fast as he could, but he was still hit by the 3rd jet of black light. Boom! Amidst a deafening boom, Dragon Abyss was struck by the mysterious black beam of light. Its 1,000-meter-long body was blasted back, crashing heavily into a rocky mountain 10 kilometers away. Strangely, the jet of black light didn't destroy its body. Instead, it enveloped its head and rolled violently for a long time. It was only when Dragon Abyss smashed half of the mountain into pieces and fell to the bottom of the sea that Ji Tianqing and Tai realized that something was wrong. Damn it! The blood god's killer move is an attack on the divine soul. It's over. Long Yuan was already severely injured, and now he's been hit by the blood god's secret technique. His divine soul must be severely injured. The 2 of them cursed inwardly. They were worried and anxious for Long Yuan. Long Yuan was not dead yet. He fell powerlessly into the pile of rocks. His body twitched violently, but he could no longer get up. His divine soul was in a state of dizziness. It seemed that he could no longer control his dermic powers. Without the suppression of dermic powers, his physical injuries were all exposed. Large amounts of dragon blood gushed out and dyed the surrounding seawater red. The blood god grinned. His body was like a whirlpool, quickly devouring the dragon blood in the seawater and absorbing Long Yuan's power. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing and Tai were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Murderous intent surged out of their bodies. Blood god! I will kill you today. Demon, you've killed countless people. Even if you kill me 10,000 times, it will not be enough to appease my hatred. Tai roared. His body shone with dazzling golden light. He unleashed all his dermic powers and performed the secret technique of the Golden Dragon tribe. He suddenly opened his giant dragon mouth and spat out a jet of golden fire toward the blood god. That was his golden dragon's breath, and also his most powerful secret technique. After he spat out the dragon breath, whether he could kill the blood god or not, he would suffer a backlash and be powerless for a few months. Ji Tianqing also wielded his broken sword with a murderous aura. From 10 miles away, he viciously stabbed at blood god. Stab! The next moment, the 100-foot-long golden dragon breath hit the blood god. Its gigantic body, which was over 100 feet tall, was instantly pulverized by the dragon's breath and turned into black mist that filled the sky. Then, the sword that Ji Tianqing had thrust out with all his strength also exploded from a dazzling cold light. Boom! Amidst a deafening boom, the cold light exploded and covered the sky, illuminating the sea within a radius of 100 miles. Countless balls of pitch-black demonic mist were shattered into wisps and scattered in the cold seawater. Tai released his most powerful attack and landed at the bottom of the sea weakly. His body flashed with golden light and he returned to his human form. Chapter 1257. Just as Ji Tianqing had expected, the blood god wasn't killed on the spot. As a fiend that was between a devil and a ghost, it was special and powerful. It could be said to be indestructible. Even though Tai's golden dragon breath had hit it and Ji Tianqing's most powerful sword attack had hit it. After it had been blasted into thousands of strands of black qi, it could still gather in the water and quickly condense into a cloud of black mist. However, the blood god didn't know that Ji Tianqing knew the blood god very well and had killed a blood god with his own hands. The moment it reformed its body, Ji Tianqing, who had been accumulating power, suddenly opened the third eye on his forehead. Thunder spiritual eye. Thunder. As he yelled, the golden eye on his forehead released endless thunder power. It gathered into a blue beam of thunder and struck the blood god. The blood god had just reformed its body and wasn't prepared for Ji Tianqing's attack, so it was immediately hit. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the 10-meter-long pillar of lightning struck the blood god with devastating power. At that moment, the dark sea within dozens of miles was illuminated by the dazzling thunder. The blood god's sun was also shrouded by the lightning. The dense black mist quickly collapsed and dissipated under the violent lightning power. Even though they were deep in the sea and the water weakened the power of the thunder, the blood god was still weak. However, the blood god's sun was weak to begin with. He had just reformed his body, so his defense wasn't strong. Ji Tianqing released all the lightning energy stored in his Dharma eye, leaving not a single drop behind. The terrifying power was enough to kill it on the spot. The loud sound echoed in the canyon. The blue lightning flashed crazily in the water and didn't disappear until 10 seconds later. Everything went back to normal after 10 seconds. The lightning disappeared, and so did the extremely dense pitch-black demonic fog. The blood god that had created all kinds of disasters and killed tens of millions of people of the water race was also turned into ashes. The canyon gradually regained its tranquility. Tai stood at the bottom of the sea and stared at the canyon with his eyes wide open. He was shocked and couldn't believe it. Even the Ox-Head Demon Commander, Yun Yao and Black Dragon, who were fighting not far away, stopped fighting. Everyone looked at the empty sea and saw the blood god disappear on the spot. They were all dumbfounded. No one could believe that the blood god, who was as powerful as an overlord at the 5th level of the soul-refining realm, had been killed by Ji Tianqing in one attack. It was definitely a miracle. Only Ji Tianqing knew that he had only been able to kill the blood god because of luck. Before he had arrived at the canyon, the blood god had been fighting with Tai and Dragon Abyss had used a lot of its energy. Plus, he and Tai had both used their ultimate moves to injure the blood god and exhaust him. Most importantly, the thunder divine power was the best power to counter power. Because of this, he was able to kill the blood god with a bolt of lightning at the most appropriate time. While everyone was still in a daze, Ji Tianqing was still clear-headed and calm. He didn't hesitate at all. He held the black sword of burial of heaven and charged at the ox-head demon commander. He swung his sword and used his ultimate sword technique. Stab sword. He held the broken sword in his hand and thrust it forward. A cold light that had been condensed to the limit flashed in the sea for a moment. When the ox-head demon commander came back to his senses, his expression changed drastically as he retreated in fear. The blood god was dead and he had lost his biggest support. Of course, he didn't want to fight anymore. However, as soon as he retreated 100 feet away, the dazzling cold light pierced through his protective magic power and armor and exploded in his chest. Boom! A loud, muffled sound erupted and reverberated throughout the canyon, causing everything within 100 miles to tremble incessantly. The dazzling cold light of the sword illuminated an area of 100 miles. It was like a sun at the bottom of the sea, making people unable to open their eyes. As for the ox-head demon commander, who was at the 4th level of the soul-tempering realm, he had already been crushed by the power of the sword. His muscular body and powerful divine soul had been shattered by the sword light. The earth-shattering sound lasted for a long time before it disappeared. After a dozen breaths of time, the canyon regained its peace, and the battle finally came to an end. Everyone looked at Ji Tianqing, their eyes filled with awe. Of course, other than shock, the eyes of the 3 surviving elite demon kings were also filled with endless fear. In their minds, the ox-head demon commander and the blood god were invincible. They could wipe out the East Sea and kill billions of people. But their goal and ambition had just started. They were defeated before they could achieve it. The ox-head demon commander and the blood god had both died in this canyon. Even though they had seen the whole process with their own eyes, they still felt like they were dreaming. It was too unreal. At this moment, Yin Yao and the Black Dragon regained their senses and immediately used their ultimate techniques to kill the 3 elite demon kings. The battle was over. The crisis of the East Sea had been resolved. Tai Yi looked at Ji Tianqing deeply and gave him a thumbs up. He said with a complicated expression, "Tianqing, you are now unparalleled in the world. Today, you have helped us kill the blood god and resolved the crisis of the East Sea. The Imperial Court of the Sea will remember your kindness forever." Ji Tianqing nodded calmly and said, "Let's not talk about this. Let's take a look at Long Yuan's injuries first." As he said that, he flew towards Long Yuan. Tai Yi also came back to his senses. He quickly swam to Long Yuan's side through the dark sea. Long Yuan was still lying in the ruins at the bottom of the sea. His 1,000-meter-long dragon body had turned into human form. He was lying on a pile of rubble. Blood was flowing out of his body and he was twitching. His body was covered in a layer of black fog. His divine soul was very weak. His eyes were closed and he was on the verge of death. Tai Yi was worried when he saw his serious injuries. He asked, "Long Yuan, how are your injuries? Are you able to hold on?" Long Yuan tried his best to open his eyes. He looked at Tai Yi and said weakly, "Your Highness, Long Yuan can't protect you anymore. Please take care of yourself, Your Highness." Tai Yi frowned and said worriedly, "Long Yuan, you don't have to say too much. I will take you back to the Imperial Court now and heal you. You have been the commander of the Imperial Court's guards since I was young. You have been protecting me with your life all these years. I will not let you die like this." Ji Tianqing frowned and said, "Tai Yi, it's too late to bring him back to the Imperial Court to heal. Let me try. Maybe I can save him." Long Yuan shook his head and said weakly, "Your Highness, there's no need. My divine soul has been shattered. Even if the gods are here, there's nothing they can do." Chapter 1258. Long Yuan was obviously going to say his last words. Ji Tianqing and Tai Yi looked confused. They could not guess why he would say his last words to the Black Dragon. However, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate. He quickly sent a telepathic message to the Black Dragon to Long Yuan's side. The Black Dragon approached Long Yuan and said in a low voice, "Senior Long Yuan, thank you for teaching me. If you have any regrets or unfinished business, please tell me." Long Yuan turned to look at him. His eyes gradually became clear and bright. He said solemnly, "Black Dragon, with your current status, I dare not call you senior anymore. You have awakened the divine beast bloodline and become a divine beast Black Dragon. You are different from us scaled dragons. In the future, you are destined to shine and shock the world. My soul has been shattered. I am destined to die. However, I have cultivated hard for 800 years in this life. I have accumulated countless powers and dragon breath. If I die like this, I will not be willing. I am fated to be with you. Before I die, I will pass on all the remaining powers and dragon breath in this body to you." Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing, Tai Yi, and the others came to a realization. They all showed a complicated expression. The Black Dragon shook his head and quickly said, "Senior Long Yuan, how can this be?" Long Yuan looked at him with a determined gaze. "This is my last wish. Please fulfill it. Don't make me regret it." "No, that is not what I mean." The Black Dragon quickly shook his head and explained, "I have done nothing for you. I dare not accept your gift. You have to accept it even if you can't." Long Yuan growled and said stubbornly, "It is my honor to teach you what's left of my magic power and dragon breath. You have inherited my powers, which means you have inherited my will. In the future, you must kill all the demons invading the East Sea and get rid of evil for the people." The Black Dragon fell silent. He looked at him with a complicated gaze. He could not refuse again. Long Yuan slowly closed his eyes and sat up with all his strength. He looked at the Black Dragon and said in a serious tone, "Black Dragon, don't hesitate. Accept my power." As he said that, he waved his palms and formed a spell seal. His body surged with a thick black light and a powerful aura. At this moment, Long Yuan regained the power of a spirit-refining cultivator. It was as if he had never been injured. But everyone present knew that this was the final radiance of the setting sun, and also the final moment of Long Yuan's life. The Black Dragon did not refuse. He twisted his mountain-like dragon body and quickly curled into a black ball of light, hovering in the valley. The black light ball enveloped Long Yuan, and a vast amount of magic power and dragon breath gushed out of Long Yuan's palms, pouring into the black light ball without any reservation. The seabed within a radius of dozens of miles immediately surged with undercurrents and surging waves, enveloped by an invisible aura. Ji Tianqing, Tai Yi, and the others watched this scene with complicated expressions. They all waited silently. Long Yuan's decision, his righteousness and generosity, caused everyone to feel deep veneration. Time passed quietly. The black ball of light within a radius of 100 feet gradually stopped rotating, and the five-colored spiritual light also gradually dimmed. Whoosh! The black ball of light expanded. Soon, it turned into a black dragon 1,000 meters long. It regained its original appearance. The undercurrent at the bottom of the sea gradually calmed down. Everyone looked at the ruins. They saw a black dragon 1,000 meters long lying quietly at the bottom of the sea. The black dragon was covered in wounds. His life force was still cut off. He had no aura. It was Long Yuan, who had just passed away. Clearly, he had no regrets after passing his life's power and dragon's breath to the black dragon. He died on the spot. After he died, he could no longer maintain his human form. He revealed his true form. Everyone looked at Long Yuan's corpse. They mourned with heavy hearts. The black dragon's eyes flashed with determination. He said in a low and solemn voice, "Senior Longyuan, I will always remember your last wish. I will do my best to kill the demons." Tai walked to Longyuan's corpse. "Longyuan," he said in a serious voice, "you served the imperial court when you were alive. You were loyal and devoted. Today, you died in the disaster. You didn't retreat until the last moment. You are the pride of the Black Dragon race and the Imperial Court. I will take your corpse back to the Imperial Court and announce your death to the East Sea. I will bury you in the Sky Dragon tomb for future generations to mourn." Then, he clenched his left fist and punched his chest. He saluted Longyuan's corpse. Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, and the others also bowed solemnly. They paid their last respects to Longyuan. After a while, Tai calmed down. "Everyone, the dead are gone. Dying on the battlefield is the pride and destiny of the dragon race. There is no need to be sad. Although the blood god is dead, the disaster is not over. We still need to be strong to save the tens of millions of people." He ordered 4 Sky Origin Realm generals to escort Longyuan's corpse back to the Imperial Court. He personally returned to the refugee camp in the canyon and led many soldiers to save the survivors. When everyone returned to the canyon, they saw the miserable scene in the refugee camp. It made their scalps tingle. The bottom of the sea, which stretched for 2,000 miles, was covered in white bones. The seawater had turned dark red. Wisps of blood chi gathered into a large blood mist that enveloped the entire refugee camp. The blood god and the strong demons were all dead. No one could devour the blood mist. The area within 2,000 miles was like a blood purgatory. Tens of millions of people of the water race had died tragically in the refugee camp, turning into mountains of white bones. The tens of millions of people who had survived hid in the defense formation in fear and despair. They trembled and screamed. Tai and the soldiers of the Water Clan were infuriated to see so many civilians die. Their hearts were filled with overwhelming hatred. Although the blood god and the strong demons were dead, the refugee camp was still filled with a large amount of poisonous black water. If left alone, the poisonous black water would last for at least half a month before it was diluted. But even if Tai wanted to get rid of the poison, there was nothing he could do. Seeing that he was troubled, Ji Tianqing said, "Tai, take the soldiers to clean up the battlefield. Patrol the canyon and search for the survivors. Leave the poison in this area to me. It will be dealt with quickly." Tai glanced at him and nodded in agreement. Then, Tai took the soldiers to search for the survivors. Ji Tianqing stood in the refugee camp. He cast a spell with a serious expression. He activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and formed a huge whirlpool of white light. The whirlpool, which was 10 meters wide, floated in the canyon and crazily devoured the poisonous black water in all directions. The terrifyingly powerful poisonous black water entered the heaven-mending orb after being swallowed into the whirlpool. Ji Tianqing cast a spell for 24 hours. It took him an entire day to completely devour the poisonous black water in the canyon. Chapter 1259. Ji Tianqing swallowed the last of the poisonous black water before ending the spell. He had used up a lot of his magic power and was mentally exhausted. The heaven-mending orb in his mind was also faintly black because it had swallowed a huge amount of poisonous black water. However, he was not worried. In the next half a month, the heaven-mending orb would definitely be able to purify the poisonous black water and turn it into a majestic and mysterious white light to strengthen the power of his soul. An hour later, Tai heard the news and hurried over. Seeing the blue and clear seawater in the canyon without a trace of poisonous black water, he was rather shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. The poisonous black water released by the blood god's son made even me feel apprehensive. Even a soul-level formation would be penetrated within a few days. I really didn't expect that you, Tianqing, would only use a short day to remove all the poisonous black water. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I really wouldn't dare to believe it. How did you do it? Ji Tianqing only smiled and did not explain. Tai, the crisis has been resolved. I can't help much even if I stay. The poisonous black water in the black ink region should dissipate on its own soon. You still have to properly settle the hundreds of millions of people. You should be busy for a long time. We won't disturb you any longer. Farewell. Ji Tianqing took Yun Yao and the black dragon to bid farewell to Tai in person. Tai saw that he looked tired but wanted to leave as soon as possible, so he warmly urged him to stay. Tianqing, if it weren't for your help this time, I definitely wouldn't have been able to quell this disaster. Not just the Black Ink region, half of the East Sea would probably be in chaos. Hundreds of millions of people would have died. It was you who turned the tide and saved the entire East Sea, saving the lives of hundreds of millions of people. How can I let you leave with such a great favor? I hope you can stay for a while longer. When I'm done, I'll thank you properly. Right now, you've used up too much of your magic power and are exhausted. You should stay and rest. Ji Tianqing shook his head and rejected his friendship. Tai, I really do have important things to do. I can't waste any more time. As for the favor, since you treat me as a brother, there's no need to be formal. Just remember it in your heart. Tai saw that he was determined and could not persuade him anymore. After a moment of silence, he could only nod. All right. I and the Imperial Court of the Water Race will remember your favor. We will definitely repay you in the future. Since you have important things to do, I won't keep you any longer. Oh right, if there's anything you need, feel free to ask. This monarch will definitely do his best to help. Thank you for your kind intentions. Let's part ways here. We'll meet again. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and left with Yun Yao. He stepped onto the black dragon and quickly swam away. The black dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and quickly swam to the surface of the sea. 10 breaths later, the black dragon rushed out of the sea and flew into the blue sky. It was time for the sun to rise from the east. The bright red sun rose from the horizon in the east, dyeing the vast sea red. A gentle breeze blew. The sky was high and the sea was wide. The black dragon let out a roar and flew across the sky toward the eastern sea's returning ruins. Previously, it had received Long Yuan's power and its power had increased explosively. Its magic power and dragon breath had more than doubled. After all, Long Yuan was a powerful being in the 5th level of the soul refinement realm. Even if he only gave it 30% of his 800 years of cultivation, it was enough for it to successfully break through to the 2nd level of the soul refinement realm. In reality, the little black dragon's benefits were not limited to what was on the surface. Increasing one level of cultivation was secondary. Its greatest gain was the increase in the power of its dragon breath. It had also inherited Long Yuan's combat skills and cultivation experience. This was the most precious thing to it. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao sat on the black dragon's back. They each consumed a spirit pill and began to meditate to recover their magic power. As time passed, the sun and moon rose in the east and set in the west. Day after day passed. About 10 days later, the black dragon finally arrived at the entrance of the eastern sea's returning ruins. When 2 towering mountains appeared on the sea ahead, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao both ended their cultivation and opened their eyes. Looking at the 2 lonely black mountains, the 2 only felt a mysterious and cold aura coming from them. This was Ji Tianqing's 2nd time coming to the eastern sea's returning ruins. But when he saw the eastern sea's returning ruins again, he was still very unfamiliar with this forbidden land. He maintained vigilance and reverence in his heart. In ancient words, the returning ruins means the end of the sea. The eastern sea's returning ruins is the end of the eastern sea. Legend has it that this is the boundary between heaven and earth. Stepping into the eastern sea's returning ruins is another world, a magical and extraordinary world. Since ancient times, the Eastern Sea's returning ruins has left behind too many myths and legends. It has always been regarded as the continent's #1 forbidden land. Ji Tianqing stared at the foggy sea surface and introduced it to Yunyao. There are all kinds of bizarre events and scenes here. It's filled with danger and also full of opportunities. Yunyao nodded and looked around curiously. She asked, Tianqing, are we going straight to our target or are we going to explore the Eastern Sea? Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said in a low voice, business is more important. Let's go to the Sun-Moon furnace first and check it out carefully. He thought to himself. It had been 3 months since he left Middle State. There were only about 9 months left of the 1-year period set by the Mansion Lord. He did not want to waste these 9 months, much less waste them. Therefore, he had to make the best use of his time to cultivate and raise his strength desperately. Swoosh! The black dragon passed through the 2 mountains on the sea surface and flew into the returning ruins. The moment they entered the returning ruins, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao felt as if they had entered another world. The sky was filled with a hazy, gray mist. It was boundless, preventing them from seeing what was before them. The surroundings were filled with an invisible pressure, suppressing the power of their souls. As a result, their souls could only scan a radius of 10 kilometers. The surroundings were silent. They could not hear anything, nor could they see anything alive. There was no sea breeze in the sky, and the surface of the sea did not move at all. Such a strange scene filled Yunyao with curiosity, but at the same time, she was also secretly vigilant. Ji Tianqing had seen it before, so he was not surprised at all when he saw it now. He thought silently about how he should search for the Neptunian divine pearl after finding the Sun-Moon furnace. The black dragon flew steadily above the surface of the sea, heading towards the Sun-Moon furnace according to the direction and route Ji Tianqing had pointed out. In the next few days, the two of them traveled through the returning ruins. The process was extremely peaceful, and they did not come across any danger. Even though powerful, demonic beasts appeared below the surface of the sea, in the sky, and on a few islands along the way. However, when the demonic beasts sensed the presence of the divine dragon, they were all frightened out of their wits. They were afraid to show themselves or attack them. Half a month later, the two of them passed through the outer regions of the returning ruins and entered the true forbidden grounds of the returning ruins. Chapter 1260. One island after another floated in the air above the sea. This was the floating island sea region. Each floating island had a radius of several hundred miles. From afar, they looked like mushrooms or large umbrellas floating in the air. It was a spectacular sight. However, under this new and spectacular scene, there was a great danger. When the black dragon flew past a floating island covered in primitive forests, it alarmed the demonic beast on the floating island. On this floating island with a radius of over 500 miles, there was a lightning sky wolf that was over 100 meters tall and the size of a small mountain. It was named Lightning Sky Wolf not because it could control the power of thunder and lightning, but because it was as fast as lightning. When it moved, it was only an afterimage. Its entire body was silver-white and sparkled with specks of starlight. It was clear that this lightning sky wolf had occupied this place for countless years. The surrounding sea region of 50,000 miles was its hunting range. It absorbed the essence of the sun and moon day and night, casting a body of silver fur that was as tough as soul-grade armor. It rushed out of the floating island, turning into a silver afterimage. It stretched out its claws and valiantly pounced on the black dragon. Although the black dragon's strength had reached the second level of the soul refinement realm and its entire body emitted a divine aura, it did not intimidate it. Instead, it gave rise to a cruel and bloodthirsty desire. It vowed to tear the black dragon to pieces and devour it. After all, its strength had reached the 5th level of the soul refinement realm. In its eyes, the black dragon was an excellent tonic. If it could devour the black dragon, it could absorb the dragon's blood and soul, and its bloodline would evolve and improve greatly. When danger approached, the black dragon immediately sensed that something was wrong. Its eyes flashed with a cold light. It opened its mouth and let out a dragon roar. A huge northern underworld black water pillar shot towards the lightning sky wolf. The lightning sky wolf's strength was extraordinary. Its figure flashed and dodged the northern underworld black water pillar. It continued to attack the black dragon. That terrifyingly powerful black water pillar streaked across the sky and hit the floating island dozens of miles away with a loud boom. The huge floating island was blasted into pieces on the spot, sending dust and debris into the air. Strangely, the floating island was shattered into several pieces, but it was still floating in the air and did not fall into the sea. However, the black dragon did not have the time to think about this problem. Seeing the lightning sky wolf's sharp claws pouncing in front of him, he did not hesitate to raise his dragon claws and fiercely slap them. Boom! The dragon claw and the wolf claw collided with a loud bang, exploding with a loud bang that reverberated in the sky. The heavenly lightning wolf was about 10 times smaller than the black dragon, but its speed and strength were terrifyingly powerful. The black dragon was actually sent tumbling backwards, landing on the surface of the sea 10 miles away. The heavenly lightning wolf was also sent flying. However, after flying 1,000 meters away, it quickly twisted its body and turned into a silver afterimage, attacking the black dragon as fast as lightning. In that instant it was as if a bolt of silver lightning had really streaked across the sky, suffocating the black dragon's neck. At the same time, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had already woken up. The two of them stood in the sky with cold expressions. Their bodies surged with monstrous killing intent. Yun Yao let out a tender cry as she waved her cold moon sword and ruthlessly slashed out a huge crescent-shaped sword light. Moonblade Sky Attack. The silver crescent-shaped sword light streaked across the sky and slashed towards the heavenly lightning wolf, bursting with an invincible power. However, the heavenly lightning wolf waved its front claws and smashed the sword light into pieces with a boom. At this time, Ji Tianqing also attacked brazenly. He didn't use the broken sword, Burial of Heaven. Instead, he released 3 divine soul magic swords and performed a unique sword technique to attack the heavenly lightning wolf. Soul Slashing Sword. The 3 divine soul magic swords all turned into giant white swords that were as dazzling as the sun. The heavenly lightning wolf's front, left and right sides were blocked by the divine soul magic swords. There was nowhere for it to hide. Boom, boom, boom. A series of loud noises burst out. White light that blotted out the sky and the sun exploded in the sky, surging with raging airwaves. The heavenly lightning wolf was sent flying on the spot. There were huge wounds on its head and back, and dark red blood gushed out. Ji Tianqing's divine soul magic swords not only cut its physical body, but also attacked its divine soul through the body. Its divine soul was shaken, and it was sent flying 10 miles away. Still dizzy, it drew an arc in the sky and fell towards the sea below. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing controlled the 3 divine soul magic swords to burst out with even more power to chase after the heavenly lightning wolf. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 divine soul magic swords pierced the sky with a long, blazing white majesty, and pierced towards the heavenly lightning wolf's head, neck, and back in an invincible manner. When the heavenly lightning wolf finally woke up and could control its body to move, it was already too late. It didn't have time to escape before it was pierced by the 3 divine soul magic swords. Boom, boom, boom. Another series of loud noises burst out, shaking the sky. Its head, neck, and back were all hit by the divine soul magic swords, and huge holes appeared on the spot. Broken bones and blood splattered everywhere. Then, the terrifying power of the 3 giant swords poured into its body and exploded with a loud bang. With a loud boom, its mountain-like body exploded on the spot, turning into pieces of flesh and blood that covered the sky and covered the earth, scattering all over the sky. The sky for dozens of miles around turned into a world of white light mixed with dark red flesh and blood. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood, and the wind howled. Among the flesh and blood that covered the sky, there was a dense white light that streaked across the sky like a meteor, fleeing into the distance as fast as lightning. Inside the dense white light was a white crystal the size of a washbasin. It was the heavenly lightning wolf's soul crystal. The black dragon had long expected this result. Its figure flashed and rushed up, blocking the soul crystal's escape path. It raised a pair of mountain-sized dragon claws and slapped the soul crystal hard. Bang! The soul crystal was sent flying back to where it came from. The soul crystal was still flying in the sky. Before it could stop, Ji Tianqing controlled the divine soul magic swords and slashed at it. With a crisp, "Kacha" sound, the lightning sky wolf's soul crystal was shattered into 4 pieces on the spot. The ferocious heavenly lightning wolf was killed by Ji Tianqing just like that. 4 pieces of blazing white soul crystals fell from the sky and landed on the sea below. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and shot out 4 golden palms, grabbing the 4 soul crystal fragments and bringing them back to him. The battle was over. The black dragon and Yunyao returned to his side. The two rode the black dragon and continued to fly forward. Ji Tianqing stood on the dragon's back, holding the 4 pieces of the soul crystal in his left hand and the broken sword Burial of Heaven in his right hand. As expected of a demon beast at the 5th level of the soul refining realm. After absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon for hundreds of years, the soul crystal's divine soul power is so vast. Chapter 1261. Ji Tianqing placed the soul crystal fragment of the heavenly lightning wolf into the broken sword and handed it over to Burial of Heaven to devour. For Burial of Heaven, the fastest way to recover its strength was to devour the soul crystal of a demon beast. In the past half a year, it had rarely made a sound or showed its face. It had been quietly recovering its strength. Ji Tianqing couldn't estimate to what extent its strength had recovered. But he could roughly guess that the power of Burial of Heaven's sword was now a genuine soul-level top-grade item. It was only a step away from recovering to the primordial spirit level. After a while, Burial of Heaven devoured the soul crystal fragment. Ji Tianqing put away the broken sword. Yunyao stood beside him, frowned and thought for a while. Then she said, "Tianqing, I saw you use the soul magic sword just now. Its power seems to be stronger than before." Ji Tianqing nodded and explained, "That's true. The heaven-mending orb provides a steady stream of mysterious power, making my soul grow stronger. In the past 2 months, the power of my soul has doubled. It will soon reach the 4th level of the soul refining realm." Yunyao showed a gratified expression and asked, "Why haven't I seen you use the secret technique you used just now? Is it a secret technique you recently comprehended?" The corners of Ji Tianqing's mouth curled up into a smile as he nodded and said, "Actually, I didn't fully comprehend it myself. The soul slayer I used just now is a sword technique of Kenshin's secret technique. However, my strength hasn't reached the saint realm, so I can't fully display it. Adding my own comprehension and adaptability, I used the soul magic sword to display it. Just now was the first time I used it. It was also the prototype of the soul slayer sword technique. I have to study and comprehend it more in the future." The two chatted for a while, then sat on the dragon's back and continued to meditate. 3 days later, when Ji Tianqing was cultivating, he suddenly noticed a change in the sword world. He immediately ended his cultivation and entered the sword world with his soul to check the scene inside. He saw that the vast sword world was undergoing an earth-shattering change. The world within the sword was originally bright and sunny, but now, the sky was covered with dark clouds, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. In a majestic mountain range 2,000 miles away from peaceful Soil City, there was a 1,000-meter-tall mountain peak that shone with the light of the sun and moon. The golden and silver dermic powers were exceptionally dazzling, illuminating half of the sky. Deep under the mountain peak, there seemed to be a giant ball of gold and silver light that was boiling. A terrifying force spread out and spread through the ground, causing the earth and mountains within 1,000 miles to tremble and rumble. The nearby mountain peaks were shaking violently. Large cracks were constantly appearing on them, and countless boulders and yellow soil were rolling down. The dark clouds in the sky of Heaven City swirled continuously, actually formed a pitch-black vortex of the mountain peaks. It was of the heaven of Heaven City's eyes, the of Heaven's birth Heaven City, the heaven of Heaven lightning. Such a huge worldly anomaly was like the wrath of Heaven Duke, and a calamity was about to descend. All the Earth Spirit citizens in peaceful Soil City were alarmed. Thousands of citizens looked up at the sky, seeing the dark clouds, lightning, and wind wreaking havoc. Their faces were filled with fear and worry. The city was in chaos. The citizens ran about in panic, discussing and crying out. Heavens! How can this be? What's going on? Why is there such a shocking change in the world? Did we do something wrong and offend the gods? Are they sending down a calamity to punish us? Everyone, quickly hide. The calamity is coming. Where's young Master Ji? Quickly inform young Master Ji. He must know what's going on. In the hearts of the Earth Spirit citizens, Ji Tianqing was an omnipotent expert. There was nothing in the world that he couldn't do. When the calamity was about to arrive, all the citizens hoped that he would appear. Ji Tianqing witnessed the changes in the sword world with his own eyes. His expression immediately changed, revealing a grave expression. That mountain peak seems to be where Qianyue is cultivating in seclusion. Now that there's such a phenomenon, it's probably about to break through to the soul-refining state. However, the phenomenon of heaven and earth caused by the Black Dragon's breakthrough to the soul-tempering stage wasn't as earth-shattering as this one. What's going on? Is Qianyue's situation special? Are there any changes? Full of doubts and worries, he immediately entered the sword world and flew to the sky above peaceful Soil City. His voice was as loud as a bell. Don't panic, everyone. This is not the wrath of the gods or a calamity. This is a phenomenon caused by my pet breaking through to the soul-refining state. It'll be over soon. Everyone, stay at home and don't go out casually in case of accidents. His voice turned into a rumbling sound wave that spread throughout the entire peaceful Earth City, allowing all the citizens to hear him clearly. When the Earth Spirit race citizens saw him and heard his explanation, they felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, and they felt much more at ease. Ji Tianqing saw that the city had calmed down. He hurriedly flew to the mountain 2,000 kilometers away to see what was going on. A quarter of an hour later, he had flown more than 1,000 kilometers away and landed on a mountain peak 200 kilometers away from Qianyue. He originally wanted to fly to the mountain peak where Qianyue was in seclusion to take a closer look. However, the black clouds in the sky had already condensed. A few bolts of purple lightning had condensed in the huge black vortex, ready to strike at any time. The space within a radius of 300 miles was sealed by the invisible divine power of heaven and earth, like a cage. Ji Tianqing wanted to approach Qianyue's place of seclusion. Not only did he have to endure the terrifying divine power of heaven and earth, but he also had to be struck by lightning. How can this be? The phenomenon caused by Qianyue breaking through to the soul-refining state is so strange and terrifying. Just how strong is its talent? He murmured in confusion. He couldn't figure it out. At that moment, Burial of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind. It said solemnly, Tianqing, this isn't a phenomenon caused by breaking through to the soul-refining state. It's a heavenly tribulation. What? A heavenly tribulation? Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and asked in disbelief, a heavenly tribulation? Isn't that the 9th tribulation realm, which is even stronger than the essence soul realm? Qianyue hasn't broken through to the soul-refining state yet. Why would it trigger a heavenly tribulation? Burial of Heaven explained in a solemn tone, a heavenly tribulation is a restriction and shackle imposed by the heavenly Tao on living beings. Its existence represents the will of heaven. Even gods can't control it. Generally speaking, the heavenly tribulation of humans, demons, devils, and other living beings will only appear after they reach the essence soul realm. I don't know why that little heavenly fox triggered a heavenly tribulation when it broke through to the soul refining state. Perhaps this is a test from the will of heaven, a restriction and shackle on the heavenly fox race. Hearing Burial of Heaven's words, Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered with a heavy heart, "Why do I feel that the will of heaven is targeting the heavenly fox race? Could it be that the heavenly fox race has offended the will of heaven or done something against the will of heaven?" Chapter 1262. Ji Tianqing had learned about Qian Yu's background from the Beast King. However, at this moment, he realized that he knew nothing about the Heavenly Fox clan. The absurd idea that popped up in his mind made him feel that it was laughable. However, the Burial of Heaven did not deny it, and even hinted that it was possible. This made him even more curious about the secrets of the Heavenly Fox clan. At this moment, the dark vortex in the sky condensed to the limit, and the power of thunder was also accumulated to the extreme. Kaboom! An earth-shattering sound burst out, echoing through the clouds for 3,000 miles. A blinding bolt of purple lightning shot out from the black vortex and struck the mountain peak in the middle of the mountains. The power of the thunderbolt was so powerful that it could make the world tremble. Even though Ji Tianqing was more than 200 kilometers away, he could clearly see that the lightning bolt was more than 1,000 meters tall and more than a dozen meters thick. Such a terrifying thunderbolt was dozens of times more powerful than the thunderbolt released by his Thunder Dharma Eye. This was not a power that could be controlled by a warrior. Only the gods or the divine power of heaven and earth could reach such a terrifying level. In the blink of an eye, the destructive pillar of lightning struck the mountain where Qian Yu was in seclusion. The towering mountain, thousands of feet high, was shattered into pieces on the spot, bursting into gravel and dregs. Endless dust and smoke spread out in all directions, covering the sky for hundreds of miles. The area was almost dark, and the light was so dim that it was impossible to see anything. The violent shock wave, mixed with purple thunderbolt and dust, spread out in all directions. Wherever the shock wave passed, mountains higher than thousands of feet were all flattened in an instant, as if they were neatly cut by a giant blade. Ji Tianqing hurriedly released his protective mana and condensed it into a golden light barrier. Only then was he able to block the destructive shock wave. After a while, the shock wave flattened the mountains within a radius of 500 miles, and the power gradually weakened and calmed down. Ji Tianqing stared at the place where Qian Yu was in seclusion, and his heart was full of worry. When the lightning and dust dissipated, he saw that the 1,000-foot-tall mountain had disappeared, leaving only a huge crater with a radius of 50 miles. The deep pit was charred black, with thick smoke billowing out from it. The power of thunder, the might of heaven and earth, is actually so terrifying. Ji Tianqing had personally witnessed the might of the heavenly tribulation lightning. He couldn't help but be shocked and exclaim in admiration. He had thought that the purple lightning bolt was the heavenly tribulation, a test for Qian Yu. However, he suddenly realized that the pitch-black vortex in the sky had not dissipated. A second lightning beam had condensed within it and was about to strike down. Clearly, Qian Yu's heavenly tribulation was not just one bolt of lightning. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was even more worried about Qian Yu's safety. Even if I were to be struck by that lightning, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to survive. Qian Yu had yet to break through to the soul refinement realm, so how could he withstand such heavenly might? A bolt of lightning has just ended, and yet another one is about to descend. No, I have to save it. After saying that, he immediately flew into the sky and flew towards the huge pit. However, the invisible divine power that filled heaven and earth wrapped around him like a quagmire, making it difficult for him to struggle. His flying speed was pitifully slow. Usually, he would only need a few dozen breaths to cover the distance of 200 miles. But now, he would need to fly for at least an hour to reach it. He struggled desperately, and did not hesitate to use his divine soul golden sword. He stepped on it and rushed towards the deep pit. However, the more power he exerted, the stronger the invisible divine power shackles became. Burial of Heaven advised in a low voice, Tianqing, don't waste your energy. This is the shackles of the divine power of heaven and earth, and also the will of heaven. No matter who goes through the heavenly tribulation, they can only rely on themselves. Others can't get close, let alone help. Otherwise, they will be punished by heaven. Ji Tianqing was immediately filled with resentment. He asked unwillingly, can I only watch Qian Yu go through the tribulation and be blasted into pieces by the lightning without being able to do anything? Burial of Heaven calmly explained, this is the will of heaven. You can't disobey it. Qian Yu's fate is its fate. If you interfere forcefully, not only will you be punished by heaven, but the power of the heavenly tribulation will also double. If you really want to help it, you should stand here and watch. Don't interfere. This. Ji Tianqing was speechless for a moment. He could not refute Burial of Heaven's words. He could only suppress his anxiety and watch the situation in the field. It looked like the lightning pillar in the pitch-black vortex was about to descend from the sky and strike down. At this moment, in the pitch-black pit below, a bright ray of moonlight suddenly lit up and shot up into the sky like a bolt of lightning. It was a huge ball of silver light, which wrapped around 100-meter long, ice-blue celestial fox. The celestial fox's body was huge, and it had 9 gorgeous tails. Its whole body was glowing with an ice-blue light, exuding a domineering aura. In the face of the dark vortex in the sky and the destructive pillar of lightning, it was fearless. It stayed in the sky and put on a defensive posture, as if it was going to resist the heavenly tribulation lightning. Ji Tianqing could see clearly that there were several charred wounds on its body, and blood was constantly dripping. Although it seemed to be fine, it was indeed injured by the lightning from before. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing became more and more worried. He prayed silently in his heart, Qian Yu, you must hold on. When this thought flashed through his mind, the pillar of lightning in the sky suddenly came down. Kaboom! In the deafening sound, the pillar of lightning hit Qian Yu hard and covered its body. The purple arc of lightning and light that blotted out the sky violently exploded in mid-air, causing the world to shake violently. The violent shock wave spread out, once again covering a radius of 500 miles. The mountain peaks that had already been cut in half were completely flattened. Craters were also blasted into the ground, causing dust to fly up into the air. Ji Tianqing blocked the shock wave with his magical power shield. He stood proudly in the sky, staring at Qian Yu, who was wrapped in lightning. He quickly saw that the lightning in the sky burst out in all directions, then gradually dissipated and calmed down. A dazzling ball of silver light appeared, floating in the chaotic sky. In the huge ball of silver light, there was a huge celestial fox. It was Qian Yu. Its injuries were even more serious, and the wounds on its body were even more dense. It was blood-stained, and it looked even more miserable. Not only that, most of the wounds were charred black, and black smoke was rising in spirals. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was too far away to see its specific injuries. He could only guess that its injuries were very serious. Chapter 1263. Qian Yu had already endured 2 bolts of divine lightning. However, the pitch-black vortex in the sky was still there, showing no signs of dissipating. Another bolt of lightning was still brewing within the vortex. Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief, feeling fortunate that Qian Yu had successfully survived the lightning tribulation. Seeing that the 3rd bolt of lightning was about to appear, his heart tightened again, and he hurriedly flew toward Qian Yu. He had heeded the advice of the Burial of Heaven not to interfere with the lightning tribulation. However, He wanted to be closer to Qianyu so that he could see more clearly and give Qianyu some encouragement. After about 10 seconds, he had only flown over 20 kilometers when another bolt of dazzling lightning appeared in the sky. Kaboom! Following a loud explosion, a massive bolt of purple lightning shot out from the pitch-black vortex, crashing toward Qianyu. This bolt of lightning was even more powerful than the previous two bolts, and its momentum was even more terrifying. The sky within a radius of several hundred kilometers was illuminated by the purple lightning, and even the air seemed to have solidified. In the face of this most powerful bolt of lightning, Qianyu's body glowed with a dazzling cold light, and it let loose a low roar as it charged toward the bolt of lightning. When the lightning tribulation descended, no one could avoid it. They could only choose to face it head-on, and there was no way to avoid it. Qianyu dared to face the bolt of lightning so bravely because it had something to rely on. There was a ball of white light hovering above its head. This was a necklace of icy blue gemstones, with a purple crystal dangling from the end. This was the mysterious necklace that the Beast King had placed on it when it first picked it up. Perhaps it had something to do with its past. At the same time, this necklace was also a mysterious and powerful treasure. It was the silver moonlight released by the necklace, which condensed into a massive light barrier, protecting Qianyu and helping it block the bolt of lightning. It used all of its strength to activate the power of the necklace, causing the light barrier to become even more dazzling and powerful. Bam! Amidst an earth-shattering boom, the lightning beam slammed down and struck the silver light barrier. The deafening sound spread for hundreds of miles and reverberated intensely in the sky. The dazzling silver light barrier was also blasted into pieces by the lightning beam. It exploded into pieces on the spot, filling the sky with debris. Even the shield formed by the mysterious chain of beads couldn't withstand the terrifying tribulation lightning. Fortunately, the power of the lightning beam was reduced by 90% by the shield. With only 10% of its power left, it slammed into Qianyu, sending it plummeting from the sky and crashing into the crater below. White light fragments and lightning arcs filled the sky, illuminating half of the sky. Violent shockwaves spread out in all directions, stirring up a terrifying hurricane and turning hundreds of miles of flat land into ruins. The loud noise that shook the 9 heavens lasted for a long time in the sky before dissipating. The flying debris and dust, as well as the purple lightning arcs that filled the sky, gradually disappeared after 100 breaths. The pitch-black vortex in the sky gradually collapsed and dissipated. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that Qianyu's heavenly tribulation was finally over. The formless divine power that filled the heavens and earth also gradually dissipated. Everything returned to tranquility. After the dark clouds in the sky dispersed, the sun finally reappeared. Ji Tianqing was no longer bound by the invisible cage and could finally move freely. He quickly flew across the sky and rushed towards the huge crater as fast as he could to check on Qianyu's condition. Swoosh! In a short time, he rushed to the top of the huge crater. He looked down at the crater and searched for traces of Qianyu with his sharp eyes. He saw that the crater was pitch black and billowing black smoke. The walls of the crater were made of rocks that had been scorched black by the lightning and were emitting scorching heat. The bottom of the crater was full of black scorched earth, like a ruin. In the middle of the crater, under a pile of black scorched earth, a touch of icy blue could be vaguely seen. Ji Tianqing was instantly energized. He quickly flew to the bottom of the crater and waved his palms, creating a brilliant golden light. Swoosh! The golden light pushed away the scorched earth in the crater, revealing Qianyu's figure. It was lying at the bottom of the crater, buried under countless scorched earth. The light on its body was dim and it looked quite miserable. Ji Tianqing used his divine sense to investigate and immediately found that its breath was weak and its strength had been exhausted. It was in a state of near unconsciousness. Moreover, its body was covered with dense black scorched wounds and its thick fur was stained with blood. It was severely injured and its strength was extremely weak. Even its divine sense was severely damaged and it urgently needed to recuperate. When he saw this, Ji Tianqing was stunned. Qian Yu has already condensed its divine sense. It successfully passed the heavenly tribulation and successfully broke through to the spirit-tempering realm. Thinking of this, he finally relaxed and felt happy for Qian Yu. Qian Yu's injuries were too severe and he did not dare to waste any time. He quickly used a pair of golden hands and pulled Qian Yu out of the crater. Qian Yu was on the verge of unconsciousness. When it sensed his breath, it became much more awake. Its body flashed coldly and its body shrunk rapidly until it was only 3 meters long. "Old Ji, why are you here?" It looked at Ji Tianqing with blurry eyes and spoke in a low and intermittent voice. Ji Tianqing quickly injected a large amount of mana into it to help stabilize its injuries. "Qian Yu, don't speak first. I will take you back to heal first." Qian Yu gently shook its head and said in a weak voice, "Old Ji, don't worry about me. I just passed the heavenly tribulation. I will recover soon, past the heavenly tribulation, only." Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at it with a strange expression. He said in a bad mood, "You are injured to this extent and you still can't change your bad habit of bragging." Qian Yu narrowed its eyes and squeezed out a sly smile. It explained, "Don't make a fuss. As a heavenly fox, I am destined to continue to pass the heavenly tribulation." When Ji Tianqing heard this, his heart suddenly moved. He quickly asked, "Qian Yu, are you heavenly foxes destined to endure more heavenly tribulations? Why is that?" Qian Yu shook its head and said in a weak voice, "I don't know why, but I know that these are the memories passed down in my soul." Before it could finish speaking, its eyes closed and it immediately fell into a coma. Ji Tianqing did not ask any more questions. He quickly took it across the sky and rushed back to Anshui City. The heavenly tribulation had ended and Anshui City had calmed down. The people had returned to normal. Ji Tianqing settled Qian Yu in a secret room in the city lord's residence and began to treat its injuries. He first gave Qian Yu a few healing pills and used the Wood Emperor's umbrella to heal Qian Yu's injuries. Finally, he injected a large amount of spiritual energy into Qian Yu to help heal its spiritual energy. After an entire day, Qian Yu's injuries began to improve and its condition stabilized. Chapter 1264. Swoosh. With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing exited the sword world and returned to Black Dragon's back. Black Dragon was still flying in the sea, approaching the sun-moon furnace. Yun Yao was waiting worriedly. When she saw Ji Tianqing appear, she quickly came forward and asked about the situation with concern. "Tianqing, you suddenly entered the sword world and didn't come out for an entire day. Did something happen?" Ji Tianqing explained, "Qianyu is cultivating in seclusion in the sword world. When he broke through to the soul-tempering realm, he triggered a heavenly tribulation. I was afraid that something would happen to him, so I went to check on the situation." Heavenly tribulation? Yun Yao was stunned. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Doesn't heavenly tribulation only appear at the 9th tribulation realm? Qianyue is only breaking through to the soul-tempering realm. Why would there be a heavenly tribulation? Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a serious tone, "I'm also puzzled about this. But he's a mysterious heavenly fox. Perhaps there are some unknown secrets." Yun Yao nodded slightly. She vaguely understood something and asked with concern, "Did he successfully pass the heavenly tribulation? What's his situation now?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that she didn't need to worry. "He's seriously injured, but his life isn't in danger. I've already treated his injuries. He'll be fine after resting for half a month." Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief. She frowned and said, "Qianyue's situation is so special. He triggered a heavenly tribulation when breaking through to the soul-tempering realm. After transcending the heavenly tribulation, his strength will definitely skyrocket. Moreover, the Heavenly Fox clan hides a huge secret. When he wakes up, you can ask him if he knows about it." Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood and stopped talking about this matter with her. He looked at the sea in front of him and observed the situation around him. He found that Black Dragon had already left the floating island. The surrounding sky was filled with thick clouds and mist. One after another, towering mountains stood in the white clouds and thick fog, like floating immortal mountains. Ji Tianqing knew that they weren't far from the sun-moon cauldron. Moreover, those seemingly ethereal floating mountains often had powerful demon beasts entrenched in them. He sat down cross-legged and swallowed a few pills. He circulated his qi and adjusted his breathing to recover the magic power he had lost. The Black Dragon flew past the many floating mountains, rushing towards the sun-moon furnace at lightning speed. The first few hours were quite peaceful, and they didn't encounter any danger along the way. Even if some of the mountain peaks were occupied by powerful demon beasts, they might not dare to act rashly when they sensed Black Dragon and Ji Tianqing. However, as the Black Dragon continued to venture deeper into the sinkhole, danger finally arrived. 12 hours later, an Emerald Sea Heavenly Eagle at the 5th level of the Soul Refinement Realm suddenly attacked He Long and Ji Tianqing. The Black Dragon had always been on guard. When the Jade Sea Sky Eagle launched an attack, it immediately reacted and launched a counterattack. The battle was on the verge of breaking out. The Black Dragon and the Jade Sea Heavenly Eagle exchanged 2 blows before the Black Dragon was sent flying. Ji Tianqing attacked decisively. He summoned 3 soul magic swords and performed the soul-slaying sword art again, killing the Blue Sea Heavenly Eagle in 3 moves. The Jade Sea Heavenly Eagle's body was cleaved into 2. Its soul crystal was also hacked into several pieces. Ji Tianqing obtained its soul crystal fragments and gave them to Burial of Heaven to devour to recover essence energy. The following 2 days, the Black Dragon passed through the floating mountain sea region and encountered several attacks along the way. Those demon beasts that dared to show up and attack were at least 4th level Soul Refinement Realm and above. Everyone even encountered a 6th level Soul Refinement Realm Evil Flood Dragon. But without exception, these demon beasts were all killed by Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and the Black Dragon. The demon beast's soul crystal fragments were also given to Burial of Heaven by Ji Tianqing, helping it to quickly recover its strength. When the Black Dragon left the floating mountain sea region, Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief in her heart and could not help sighing emotionally. The entire continent's Soul Refinement Realm powerhouses added up probably can't compare to the number of Soul Refinement Realm demon beasts here. The East Sea's sinkhole is indeed worthy of being the #1 forbidden land, to actually hide so many Soul Refinement Realm demon beasts. A day later, the Black Dragon finally arrived at their destination. When they were still 100 miles away, Ji Tianqing saw 2 huge black shadows appear on the sea in front of him. 2 black mountain peaks that were 10,000 meters tall towered above the sea, supporting the sky. Looking from afar, those 2 mountain peaks seemed to be floating on the sea. But in reality, that was only the part of the 2 enormous mountains that was exposed above the sea. The majority of the mountain was hidden below the sea. Large amounts of seawater gushed out from the sea around the mountain peaks, converging into a dozen or so blue water pillars, flying into the sky and watering the 2 mountain peaks. There was a lake at the top of each of the 2 mountains that was filled with azure seawater. The seawater overflowed from the lake and fell down from the mountain peaks, forming a 10,000-meter tall waterfall that poured right between the 2 mountains, pouring into a massive vortex that was 100 miles in radius. 2 towering mountains, a dozen or so water pillars that flew into the sky, as well as 2 10,000-meter tall waterfalls, and that massive vortex, formed a very peculiar scene. It was Yun Yao and the Black Dragon's first time seeing such a wondrous scene. Both of them revealed shocked expressions and let out exclamations. Is this the legendary Sun-Moon Cauldron? It really is one of the wonders of the world. It's unbelievable. How can seawater flow into the sky? When the Black Dragon arrived near the Sun-Moon Cauldron, they could see even more clearly that there was a huge ball of golden light at the bottom of the vortex between the 2 mountains. It was like a scorching sun. In the lake at the peak of the two mountains, two bright moons could be clearly seen. The moon shines in the sky, the sun sinks to the bottom of the sea, the waterfall hangs high, and the seawater flows backwards. It really is a wondrous sight. Yun Yao stood on the back of the dragon and looked down. She could not help but sigh in amazement. Ji Tianqing studied the surroundings with his sharp eyes. Only after seeing nothing strange around the sun-moon cauldron did he ask, Yao Yao, sense carefully. Is there the presence of the Neptunian orb nearby? All right. Yun Yao replied. She dismissed her thoughts in a hurry and closed her eyes to examine the surroundings. She used the power of the Neptunian orb within her, and it emitted an invisible and wondrous pulse that expanded into the surroundings. Ji Tianqing stood to one side to protect her. At the same time, he released the power of his soul to investigate the surroundings. Very soon, 100 seconds passed. Yun Yao finished her technique and opened her eyes. A smear of disappointment appeared on her face. Ji Tianqing asked in a hurry, Yao Yao, what's the situation? Yun Yao shook her head gently, I've already sensed carefully. I can't sense the presence of the Neptunian orb within a radius of 100 kilometers. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned. He murmured inside, is it not in the sun-moon cauldron either? If that's the case, there probably won't be a second Neptunian orb on the profound sky continent. Yao Yao and I have traversed most of the East Sea and spent several months to get here. Are we destined to return empty-handed? After a moment of silence, he still felt rather unwilling to give up. He tried to persuade Yun Yao, Yao Yao, don't worry. We can't give up on hope. Chapter 1265. Yun Yao obviously understood what Ji Tianqing meant. She nodded and said firmly, Tianqing, we've gone through so much and spent so many months to get here. Of course, I won't give up so easily. I've mainly investigated the surroundings earlier. There's no presence of a Neptunian pearl around the whirlpool or on the two mountains. However, there's a mysterious power in the whirlpool that seems to be able to cut off our senses. Let's investigate it more carefully. Ji Tianqing nodded in a hurry. All right. The core of the sun-moon furnace is right below the whirlpool. We obviously can't miss it. After he finished speaking, the black dragon descended from the sky and flew towards the vortex below. When it descended 10,000 meters and arrived above the whirlpool, it began to tremble violently as it flickered with light. Old G, the suction force of this whirlpool is far too great. If I continue to descend, I probably won't be able to endure it and will be devoured. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao both endured the powerful suction force as they were pulled by an invisible force. Yun Yao was slightly weaker. Her footsteps were rather unsteady as she swayed gently. She did her best to maintain her balance. Ji Tianqing was unaffected. He was as steady as a rock, not moving at all. He said sternly, Little black dragon, stop here. Endure it for a while. The black dragon nodded and no longer said anything. It resisted the suction force with all its might and stopped above the whirlpool firmly. Yun Yao did not waste any time. She used a secret technique in a hurry and used the power of the Neptunian pearl to search for another Neptunian pearl. Very soon, 100 seconds passed. She suddenly stopped circulating her cultivation technique and opened her eyes. Doubt filled her face. Ji Tianqing saw her strange expression and asked in a hurry, Yao Yao, have you discovered the presence of a Neptunian pearl? Yun Yao frowned. Only after a moment of hesitation did she say, I seem to have sensed a sliver of it, but it's vague. I can't be sure. Ji Tianqing frowned as well. He asked in some doubt, vague? In other words, the sun-moon cauldron might be hiding a Neptunian divine pearl, but its aura has been concealed. Yun Yao nodded. That's right. I think so too. Ji Tianqing looked at the vortex below and said to the black dragon, Little black dragon, leave this place and wait for us above the sea. Then, he held Yun Yao's hand and continued to descend into the vortex. In the blink of an eye, he and Yun Yao descended below the surface of the sea, getting closer and closer to the center of the whirlpool. The suction force in the whirlpool was getting stronger and stronger. It was like many invisible hands that grabbed him and Yun Yao tightly and dragged them into the whirlpool. Ji Tianqing unfolded the golden wings on his back, and a dazzling golden light enveloped him and Yun Yao. He relied on his powerful strength to resist the suction force of the vortex and quickly descended more than 800 meters. At this moment, he and Yun Yao were already in the middle of a whirlpool. They were surrounded by rapidly spinning seawater, and the center of the whirlpool was 100 meters below them. It was the place where the suction force was the most terrifying. With his strength and realm, being able to descend to this position was already his limit. He flapped his golden wings as hard as he could and erupted with tremendous power. He maintained his balance and hovered in the air. Yao Yao, sense it again. Yun Yao nodded. She closed her eyes in a hurry and used her technique to check for the Neptunian Divine Pearl's aura again. After about 30 breaths of time, she suddenly opened her eyes and revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Tianqing. Our guess was right. There really is a Neptunian Divine Pearl in the cauldron. I can sense its aura. Yun Yao's voice was filled with excitement and joy. Her eyes became much brighter as well. Ji Tianqing gathered his attention and nodded in a hurry. Just as I thought. We didn't come here for nothing. As long as we can obtain this Neptunian Divine Pearl, your cultivation will skyrocket, Yao Yao. The two of them were excited for a while, but they calmed down very soon. Tianqing, even if the Neptunian Divine Pearl exists in the Sun-Moon Cauldron, we have to go in to find it. We haven't even entered the whirlpool yet, and the suction force is already so terrifying. The Sun-Moon Cauldron under the whirlpool is also a wondrous sight where the divine energy of the world gathers. It must be terrifyingly powerful. Ji Tianqing nodded and said sternly, that's right. The Sun-Moon Cauldron is known as a divine artifact of the world. It's unbelievably powerful. It can even refine soul artifacts and god artifacts. With our strength, we'll be reduced to dust if we enter the Sun-Moon Cauldron before we can find the Neptunian Divine Pearl. Yun Yao frowned. She said worriedly, then what do we do? Do we have to give up? Impossible. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said firmly, the Neptunian Divine Pearl is extremely important to you. It's related to your life. How can we give up? Don't worry. I've thought of an idea. It might work. Hearing this, Yun Yao's eyes were filled with hope. What's the idea? Ji Tianqing took out the broken sword Burial of Heaven and said sternly, this broken sword is a supreme-grade soul artifact. It's made of great material and has great defense. With it protecting me in the Sun-Moon Cauldron, we might succeed. Yun Yao thought for a moment and nodded. That's right. A supreme-grade soul artifact's material and defense are several times stronger than ours. Only it can succeed. Tianqing, let's get ready. We'll use the power of the broken sword to enter the Sun-Moon Cauldron to check. Before she could finish, Ji Tianqing shook his head and said firmly, Yao Yao, it's not us. It's me. I'll go in alone to check the situation. You wait for me outside. No. Yun Yao subconsciously denied. She said worriedly, Tianqing, the Sun-Moon Cauldron is too dangerous. I can't let you take the risk alone. Ji Tianqing's attitude was just as firm. He said firmly, it's exactly because it's too dangerous that I can't let you in. If I go in alone, my chances of success will be higher. Yun Yao was still worried. But if something happens to you, how am I supposed to face myself? Moreover, I can use my technique to sense the Neptunian Divine Pearl's location. Ji Tianqing reached out and held her shoulders. He looked at her with sincere eyes and said with certainty, Yao Yao, I'd rather take the risk than let you get hurt. Moreover, with the power of the broken sword, protecting me is already the limit. It's almost impossible for it to protect both of us. Let's not argue anymore. It's decided. With that, he pulled Yunyao out of the whirlpool and sent her above the surface of the sea. The black dragon hurriedly flew over and carried Yunyao back into the sky. It looked down at the sun-moon cauldron from above. Yunyao stared at Ji Tianqing's figure and warned him in a heavy voice, "Tianqing, you must be careful. Don't take the risk if you can't do it. I'd rather give up the Neptunian divine pearl than let you be in danger." Chapter 1266. When Ji Tianqing rushed into the whirlpool, his figure flashed and entered the broken sword's world. Burial of Heaven controlled the broken sword and turned into a wisp of black light, ignoring the suction force of the whirlpool and entering the whirlpool unhurriedly. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the broken sword passed through the center of the whirlpool and entered the interior of the whirlpool, swallowed by a bright golden light. Yunyao and Black Dragon stopped above the whirlpool, only to see the broken sword being swallowed by the golden sun and completely disappearing. Black Dragon stared at the whirlpool without blinking, silently praying in his heart. Yunyao's heart was also in her mouth. She stared at the golden sun at the bottom of the whirlpool and muttered to herself, "Tianqing, oh Tianqing, you must come back safely." After the broken sword passed through the whirlpool, it seemed to have entered a special space. Although this was the interior of the whirlpool, it was very vast, like a circular golden ball of light. The golden ball of light had a radius of 300 miles, and the half-meter-long broken sword seemed particularly small in the ball of light. Ji Tianqing silently observed the scene in this space through Burial of Heaven's senses and vision. He saw that the surroundings were surrounded by a layer of golden light, isolating the endless seawater outside. This huge golden ball of light was the legendary sun-moon furnace, a special divine tool formed by the divine power of heaven and earth. There was no strong suction force inside the furnace, and there was no sound at all. It was very quiet. The dazzling golden light that filled the entire furnace was the legendary sun-moon divine fire, emitting a terrifying heat. Ji Tianqing had no doubt that if he didn't have the broken sword's protection and was exposed to the sun-moon divine fire, his body would be burned to ashes in less than 4 hours. Even if the broken sword was a top-grade soul tool, it still couldn't bear the burden of this sun-moon furnace and couldn't hold on for too long. As the broken sword swam in the furnace, Burial of Heaven said to Ji Tianqing in a low voice, "Tianqing, the power of the sun-moon furnace is enough to forge a soul tool. Even if I have a top-grade soul tool now, I can only hold on for half a day at most before I'm melted into liquid. Also, the sun-moon furnace is at its strongest at noon and midnight every day. It's evening now. You only have 6 hours. We have to leave this place before midnight." Ji Tianqing was releasing his soul power to search for the Neptunian divine orb's aura. Hearing Burial of Heaven's words, he said in a serious tone, "All right, I'll be as soon as possible." With that said, he continued released his soul power to search for the orb's aura. Of the sun-moon divine fire was of heaven and divine fire, of sun-moon divine fire, it could also greatly, of the sun-moon of the divine fire. Ji Tianqing's divine soul power could scan an area of 50 miles from the outside. Of the sun of the fire of the sun, the of the sun, of the of light, of this. Of the. Moreover, the broken sword was being burned by the sun-moon divine fire. Its power was rapidly being consumed, and its flying speed was also very slow. Ji Tianqing estimated that if the broken sword flew 2 rounds around the sun-moon furnace, it would take him more than 4 hours to search the entire furnace. Time was of the essence. Very quickly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing had searched an area of 50 miles. In this area, it was empty. There were only some scattered rocks at the bottom of the furnace. He could see that these rocks were rare top-grade ores and gems. Some of the ores were as hard as top-grade soul tools. They were materials used to forge soul tools. However, these ores and gems had already been melted into liquid and slag in the sun-moon furnace. They had turned into ugly rocks and lost their effectiveness. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing had searched an area with a radius of 50 miles. In this area, he found some scraps of rock debris and an oval-shaped metal ball. The fist-sized metal ball was crystal clear. It shone with a golden brilliance and exuded a mysterious and heavy aura. This piece of metal is still intact in the sun-moon furnace. It must be extraordinary. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. He released his spiritual power and condensed it into an invisible hand to grab the golden ball. However, the weight of the fist-sized metal ball was extremely shocking. It was as heavy as a 1,000-meter-tall mountain. Ji Tianqing was shocked. He was even more certain that this metal ball was extraordinary. He carefully manipulated his spiritual power to bring the metal ball into the sword world. The voice of the burial of heaven immediately sounded in his mind. It said in a low voice, "Tianqing, this is the star god metal. Take good care of it. I will need it to repair the sword in the future." Star god metal? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked doubtfully, "Why is this star god metal different from the one I got before?" 2 years ago, he had gotten a piece of star god metal from Qin Zheng, the governor of Liantian city. But the metal ball he got just now was obviously different from that golden stone. The burial of heaven explained, "The star god metal you got before was just an ordinary one. It was still in the state of gold and stone. This metal ball is a huge piece of star god metal. It has been burned for countless years by the sun-moon furnace and refined millions of times. This metal ball is the purest star god metal. There are no ores or impurities. According to my estimation, this piece of star god metal was at least as big as a house in the beginning." Ji Tianqing was shocked. He looked at the fist-sized metal ball in his hand and was speechless. A piece of star god metal as big as a house was smelted to the size of a fist. The quality of this piece of star god metal must be ridiculously high, right? The burial of heaven said solemnly, "Of course. This is a true divine item. It can be forged into a true god artifact. Even martial gods would fight over it. Fantastic. What an incredible harvest." Ji Tianqing's spirit was shaken, and his eyes were filled with joy. But why would such a huge piece of star god metal appear in the sun-moon furnace? Was it let in by someone? The burial of heaven fell silent for a moment before saying calmly, "Probably only the heavens know the answer to this question. Perhaps some god wanted to forge a god artifact and threw the star god metal here. Or perhaps the star god metal flew in from outer space and fell into the sea like a meteor, and was devoured by the sun-moon furnace. Anyway, there are all sorts of strange things in a place like the Eastern Sea's ruins of End. Anything can happen." Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. He stopped dwelling on this question and continued to search for the Neptunian divine pearl's aura. As time passed, the power of the burial of heaven was greatly depleted. It slowed down drastically as well. The dazzling golden light in the sun-moon furnace gradually became mixed with a sliver of silver. The temperature rapidly soared as well. Chapter 1267. There was only an hour left before midnight. However, Ji Tianqing still had not found the Neptunian divine pearl. There was still an area of close to 100 kilometers that he had not searched. He became rather anxious, so he got burial of heaven to fly faster. He also searched in a hurry. However, the gold and silver light in the cauldron became more and more resplendent, igniting with gold and silver flames. The temperature in the cauldron rapidly rose, becoming more and more violent and terrifying. Let alone tempered steel, even low or mid-grade soul-tier treasures would be melted into liquid very quickly. The pressure on the broken sword became greater and greater, so it could not help but slow down. At the same time, the black light from the blade rapidly melted away under the terrifying heat. Its power rapidly weakened. As time passed, the broken sword's temperature rapidly rose, and it actually began to turn red. Soon, an hour would pass. The broken sword gradually turned from dark red to bright red, about to be melted. Tianqing, there's no time. We need to leave. Burial of Heaven did his best to hold on as he communicated with Ji Tianqing secretly. It's almost midnight. The cauldron is about to erupt. If we don't leave now, we'll all be burnt to ashes. Ji Tianqing became tense. He desperately circulated the power of his soul to search for the Neptunian divine pearl in the cauldron. After hearing Burial of Heaven's words, he only hesitated for a moment before saying firmly, "Burial of Heaven, just hold on for a few more seconds. There's still one last region that we haven't searched. If you miss this opportunity, you'll need to rest for at least a month to recover. Only then can we enter this place again." Burial of Heaven obviously understood this, so he said nothing more. He erupted with power without any regard to anything else, resisting the terrifying heat and gold and silver flames. Very soon, 10 seconds passed. Midnight had finally arrived. The cauldron had reached its peak and was about to erupt. The cauldron within 150 kilometers was completely filled with gold and silver flames. The temperature had reached its limit. "Tianqing, we need to go." Burial of Heaven called out sternly. The broken sword immediately shone with black light, flying towards the exit of the cauldron. However, Ji Tianqing suddenly discovered something. He called out emotionally, "Burial of Heaven. I found it. I've finally found it." Burial of Heaven had basically run out of power. It did not care what he said at all, desperately fleeing with the broken sword. However, it never thought that with a flash of light, Ji Tianqing would actually leap out of the sword world. Swish! He was enveloped by a barrier of golden light, without any regard for his own safety, to the pile of rubble at the bottom of the cauldron. Earlier, he had clearly sensed the presence of the Neptunian divine pearl in the strange pile of rubble. He had finally found the Neptunian divine pearl's immortal divine pearl. If he missed this opportunity, he would have to wait more than a month for buried heaven to recover his vitality before he could enter again. He did not want to wait that long. Moreover, something might happen during that time. Regardless, he wanted to obtain the Neptunian divine pearl immediately without any regard for anything else. His impulsiveness and desire made him forget about the dangers and the terrifying power of the cauldron. As soon as he appeared in the cauldron, before he could even approach the pile of rubble, the barrier of power around him collapsed from the flames, dispersing into nothingness. Afterwards, his clothes and hair were instantly incinerated by the flames as well, dispersing into the cauldron as black ash. He no longer had any clothes to cover his body. He was completely naked in the cauldron. Only his Kenshin robe remained. It turned into a pair of golden wings, remaining on his shoulders. However, the golden wings were unable to protect him. They only lasted for a few seconds before running out of power and returning to his body. As a result, Ji Tianqing no longer had anything to protect his body from the corrosion of the Sun-Moon divine fire. No matter how hard he tried to use his dermic powers to protect his body, it was futile. His skin darkened at a visible rate. He had been burnt to a crisp. Afterwards, his flesh rapidly dried up as well, reduced to pitch-black charcoal, dispersing into large clumps of black ash. In just a few seconds, Ji Tianqing had been burnt to a pitch-black color. He was like a huge piece of charcoal. The excruciating pain caused him to twitch all over. He almost cried out from the pain. At that moment, there was only a single thought in his head. If death was certain, he would rather be slain by a single strike than be burnt to death by the flames. The pain went from his body to his heart and then to his soul. It was an extreme pain that no one could endure. At this moment, a dark red streak of light flew over. Swish! The scorched red sword of the Burial of Heaven returned to his side. It shone with dense black light, enveloping him. Tianqing. You're too rash. You're too reckless. You even dared to resist the sun-moon divine fire. Do you want to die? The burial of heaven growled in a low voice. It was anxious and worried. As it spoke, it was about to open the entrance to the sword world and absorb Ji Tianqing into the sword world. However, at this moment, the power of the sun-moon cauldron exploded. Boom! Following a dull explosion, the boundless divine fire of the sun and moon converged into a huge torrent of flames that erupted from the bottom to the top. At that moment, the sun-moon divine fire exploded with its most violent power. It lit up with the brightest gold and silver light. Not only was Ji Tianqing sent flying by the torrent of flames, but even the red-hot broken sword was also sent flying by the torrent of flames. It rolled for dozens of miles. Ji Tianqing and the broken sword were separated. Not only could they not find each other, but they could not even protect themselves. The man and the broken sword were about to be burned to ashes and molten iron by the sun-moon divine fire. Ji Tianqing's soul was also shaken by the power of the sun-moon divine fire. He fell into a coma. At this moment of life and death, a mysterious white light suddenly erupted from his body. It condensed into a ball of light, protecting him. The dense white light contained an incomparably powerful aura. No matter how powerful the sun-moon divine fire was, it was blocked by the dense white light. It could not hurt him at all. The shield formed by the white light was like the world's toughest protective shell, protecting him tightly. Without a doubt, the mysterious white light that burst out from his body was the divine power of the heaven-mending orb. The broken sword was enveloped by the sun-moon divine fire. After flying for dozens of miles, it was melted and distorted. The red broken sword turned into a curved stick of fire. It was even dripping with crimson water. It was on the verge of collapse and disintegration. The endless sun-moon divine fire sealed off the cauldron's entrance to the whirlpool. At this critical moment, the burial of heaven knew that it could not escape the sun-moon cauldron. Therefore, it made a risky decision. Chapter 1268. 2 hours later, the divine fire of sun and moon in the sun and moon cauldron finally stopped surging and erupting. The gold and silver light was no longer dazzling and had returned to its previous state. The extreme heat had also returned to normal, and the entire cauldron had calmed down. Dense white light enveloped Ji Tianqing as he floated silently within the gold and silver flames, flowing slowly with the flames. Ji Tianqing finally woke up. He opened his eyes and let out a painful grunt. He moved his body slightly, and a few clumps of black ash fell from his body. A few cracks also appeared on his charred body. Fortunately, he had only been burned by the divine fire of sun and moon for a few dozen seconds before the heaven-mending orb released divine power to protect him. Only his skin and flesh had been charred. Most of his meridians and organs were still intact. Huff, the divine fire of sun and moon truly is terrifyingly powerful. As expected of the divine power of the world. Fortunately, I have the heaven-mending orb in me. I already knew that it would release divine power to protect me when my life was in danger. Ji Tianqing murmured inside as he circulated his energy to heal his injuries. When he discovered the Neptunian divine orb's aura earlier, he dared to jump out of the sword world precisely because of the heaven-mending orb. If it were not for that, he would never have done something so reckless. Of course, he did this with another intention, which was to test the effects of the heaven-mending orb. Although the process was rather dangerous, the final result was as he had expected. The heaven-mending orb would be activated when he was in danger and release divine power to protect him. Moreover, the heaven-mending orb's quality and power were even higher than the divine fire of sun and moon. It could easily block the corrosion of the divine fire. This made him feel much more assured, and he believed in the legend of the heaven-mending orb even more. 100 seconds later, he temporarily stabilized his injuries with the powerful regeneration of his Kenshin bloodline and tremendous azure wood powers. Although his body was still charred like charcoal and covered in cracks, making him look terrible, his injuries had been healed. They would no longer spread or worsen, nor would they affect his movements. Whoosh! Under the protection of the barrier of white light, he quickly flew towards the pile of rubble at the bottom of the cauldron. When he arrived before the pile of rubble, he could sense even more clearly with the power of his soul that the rubble constantly pulsed with divine power. The mysterious pulses were exactly the same as the Neptunian divine pearl's presence. He couldn't wait to summon a divine soul magic sword, sweeping away the rubble on the ground. After the dozens of oddly shaped rocks were pushed aside, a thumb-sized aquamarine orb immediately appeared in front of him. The translucent pearl was ocean blue in color and emitted a mysterious energy fluctuation. However, its divine power aura was very restrained. It didn't release any dazzling light, nor did it release any intense fluctuations. Because of this, Yunyao had to get close to the sun-moon furnace and use her secret technique to barely sense its aura. Ji Tianqing searched the entire sun-moon furnace before he finally discovered its existence. It was like a dusty pearl hidden in the sun and moon furnace, buried under a pile of rubble. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of years it had been hidden. Now that Ji Tianqing had found it, it could finally see the light of day again. He kept the blue aquamarine pearl in his spatial ring and heaved a sigh of relief. I've finally found a second Neptunian divine pearl. All the danger before was worth it. A while later, Ji Tianqing left the bottom of the furnace and flew northwest. Several dozen kilometers to the northwest, a ball of fire hovered in the air. The ball of fire contained a ball of dark red liquid and a fist-sized piece of metal. The dark red liquid was the shape of the melted broken sword, while the fist-sized piece of metal was the astral divine metal that Ji Tianqing had obtained earlier. The two fused together and hovered silently in the sun-moon furnace, being refined by the sun-moon divine flames. A while later, Ji Tianqing arrived before it and asked worriedly, "Burial of Heaven, are you still alive?" The ball of fire revolved gently as Burial of Heaven's voice rang out in his head. Of course. The sun-moon divine flames are powerful, but they can't do anything to me. I'm a divine sword. Hearing Burial of Heaven's voice and how stable her breathing was, Ji Tianqing finally relaxed and let out a sigh of relief. Burial of Heaven, it's fine as long as you're fine. Oh right, you fused with this piece of astral divine metal. Did you want to refine it in the sun-moon furnace to repair the broken sword? Burial of Heaven said calmly, I was unable to save you in time due to the sudden danger, and the exit was sealed up by the sun-moon divine flames, so I couldn't escape. Since I was in dire straits, I could only think of ways to protect myself. Originally, I planned on using this piece of astral divine metal to repair the sword once I reached the level of the soul. However, the situation has changed, so I can only try using it earlier. Ji Tianqing nodded and said sternly, You've already been refined into liquid metal by the sun-moon divine flames, so you can't leave the sun-moon furnace. You can only use the divine metal to repair the sword. However, this piece of astral divine metal is the essence that has been refined by the divine flames for thousands of years. It probably won't be refined in a short period of time. How long do you need to refine this piece of astral divine metal and repair the sword? Burial of Heaven was silent for a while, then said in a low voice, At least half a month, at most a month. Furthermore, I may not succeed. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, At least half a month, and I may not succeed. Even if I have the protection of the heaven-mending pearl, I won't be able to last half a month before the power of the heaven-mending pearl is depleted. You can repair the broken sword in the furnace. I'll leave the furnace first and wait for you outside. Burial of Heaven was silent for a while, then said tentatively, Tianqing, although the sun-moon furnace is very dangerous, it is still a divine weapon. If you can use it cleverly, you can achieve miraculous results. You being able to enter the sun-moon furnace can be considered as an opportunity and a fortuitous encounter. It would be a pity to leave just like that. Ji Tianqing was confused and asked doubtfully, then you mean I should continue to cultivate in the sun-moon furnace? That's too unreliable, isn't it? Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, in Kenshin's inheritance, there is a divine-level technique called the galaxy body refining art. When Kenshin reached the god realm, he cultivated this technique. He traveled freely in the galaxy, using the power of billions of stars to refine his body, and finally, he achieved the supreme divine body. The overbearing power of the supreme divine body made his physical strength and defense so powerful that no one could rival him. He could be said to be invincible in the same realm. With your current strength and talent, you definitely can't cultivate this galaxy body refining art. However, you are a variable. You keep creating miracles, and you have unlimited potential. Perhaps you can take a risk and use the power of the sun-moon furnace to cultivate this divine-level technique. Once you can cultivate this technique, you can refine the astral divine body. You will definitely be the best in your generation and dominate the world. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.